Welcome to Weiss Schwarz. In today's video, I will be doing a beginner's guide to Lycoris Recoil within the world of Weiss Schwarz. What that means is this video is going to be covering various climax combos, various utility pieces, how the decks within Lyco Reco work, all sorts of stuff regarding how to build a Lyco Reco deck and how to play a Lyco Reco deck. I know that this video might seem sort of random considering that we got the last Lycoris Recoil set almost a year ago, and we got the first Lycoris Recoil set over 2 years ago now. But I found that right now we are almost done with June of 2026, so we're almost halfway through the year, and we had a very, very busy, hectic first 5 months of the year. January to May, there were a lot of releases, there was a lot going on. We were in the middle of a regional season that had a lot going on. So I found that there was just always something to talk about. But recently, I've noticed over the last few weeks that there just hasn't really been a lot going on with Weiss. You know, we are just starting the Summerfest season. We've only had a couple of regionals so far at the time of recording this video. We have not had a new set in, I think, a little over a month now. We will be getting a new set in a week or two when Uma Musume Set 1 comes out, but we haven't had a set since Overlord Volume 3 came out in the middle of May. So there haven't been any new set releases to talk about. Competitively, since we just finished the single season, and we are just starting the summer season with teams regionals, there just really hasn't been a lot to talk about. There's been no real announcements outside of Bunny Girl 4 being announced, which, as a side note, I'm very happy for. So there just hasn't really been much going on in English Weiss. So I've got some deck profiles in the pipeline, and I just haven't had time to edit the audio for it. And I was wondering, because I love talking about Weiss, I need to find something to talk about. And I've been playing a lot of Lycoris Recoil recently. In the middle of rewatching the show, and I thought, why don't I take the opportunity now that we've got some downtime, so to speak, with Weiss, and go do an in-depth dive into Lycoris Recoil in Weiss Schwarz. Even though the sets are at least 1 year old, 1 to 2 years old by now, there are new players getting into the game all the time who may not be that familiar with Weiss, and maybe they're getting into it because they saw Lyco Reco's got some cards, or they got into it because of a more recent set's getting cards, and then they discover that Lyco Reco has a couple sets, and they don't really know where to begin, that sort of thing. So this video is very much meant to help people who are maybe a little less familiar with Weiss, and they are just sort of trying to find their footing and just need a little bit of guidance on where they should start when it comes to building a Lyco Reco deck. So I'm hopeful. Now that I have recorded this video or started recording this video, I'm thinking that since we kind of do have somewhat of a light summer, there's not really a ton going on until ReZero comes out. I think the releases are very tame, and they're less frequent than the releases we got for the first 5 months of the year. You know, we do have a few releases in the pipeline that are coming out over the next couple of months, but really nothing too crazy until ReZero comes out. So I think I'll have some time to sort of go back and find some older sets, quote unquote older. Lyco Reco is really not old, but maybe some things that aren't quite brand new, and maybe I can continue to make these sorts of videos that sort of just discuss the various aspects of a set. This is not going to be a full-on set overview for anyone familiar with my set overview videos, where I really just go down the rabbit hole and looking at a whole bunch of various cards, and we talk about the competitiveness and the collectability, and we look at a million cards in the set and talk about them. While I will be talking about a lot of cards in this video, this is not going to be, hopefully not as long as my normal set overview videos, but also not as in-depth. I'm not going to be covering every single climax combo you can find in it within Lyco Reco's two sets, and I'm not going to be discussing every single card within both sets, but this video I think should serve as a good beginner's guide to sort of just, help people find their way around, give them a good starting point so they know what the better combos are. They know some cool level 0 lineups and some cool utility pieces, and they just sort of get a feel for how Lyco Reco works, as well as potentially matchups against other decks that are currently in our meta, that sort of thing. So without further ado, let's get into it. Before I actually start talking about the individual specific cards found within the two Lyco Reco sets we had, I just thought I'd take a little bit of time to give a brief history about Lyco Reco in Weiss Schwarz because, again, this is not a series that is quote unquote old within Weiss. The first set did come out in March of 2024, which is still pretty relatively recent. But still, just as a refresher for anyone who maybe is just getting into Lyco Reco for the first time within Weiss, but they've been around the block with Weiss for a while, but also for people who are just getting into Weiss and maybe want to learn a bit more about Lyco Reco's place within Weiss Schwarz. So Lyco Reco is an anime original project that came out in 2022, so it wasn't based on a manga or a light novel. It was pretty well received when it came out, and I think it's only grown in popularity over the years. They did release a series of short specials in 2025, which were very cute. Personally, I watched the show in the fall of 2023. Someone recommended it to me. I had not heard of it before then. I watched it, absolutely loved it. At that point, I knew we were getting an English Weiss set. I knew nothing about it. I just knew that I was going to buy into it very heavily, which I did. Bought into it very heavily, and I have played it an absolute ton ever since the first set, even before we got the premium booster. I've won 3 Lycoris Recoil Meister Cups, and just played so many variations of the deck, had a lot of fun most of the time. I think Lyco Reco is one of the most underrated sets that is in modern Weiss Schwarz, and I think it's sort of not quite an underdog because it does do well and a lot of people do respect the set, but some people do dismiss it a little bit. I think it's absolutely fantastic and there's a lot to like about it, especially if you are a fan of the anime and any subsequent spin-off sort of things. So Lyco Reco got a booster pack and a trial deck back in March of 2024. Um, and then it did eventually get a premium booster that was released in June of 2025. I would say, based on community reactions when the original booster pack came out in English in 2024, people were a little underwhelmed. I think they were sort of mimicking the fact that when it was released in Japan the prior year, that people over there were also sort of underwhelmed by the set. People might like the anime a lot, but the set people thought might have been just a tad underpowered. I think maybe people are being a little too harsh on it. Set 1 is not a perfect set, but I think the foundation was absolutely there. The premium booster sort of sealed the cracks in the ship, so to speak. And I think when the first booster set came out in English, it came out at a very weird time. It was the first set that was released after Chainsaw Man had been released in English. Chainsaw Man was a set that made a huge splash competitively when it came out. Not only at the time was Chainsaw Man just one of the most popular anime IPs that was going around at the time. People were really obsessed with Chainsaw Man, whether you play Weiss Schwarz or not. But the set, everyone knew that was familiar with Weiss when it came out that it was going to be one of the best sets, if not the best set that was in the current format at the time, which it absolutely wound up being. It was very, very annoying to play against Chainsaw Man. Chainsaw Man was a great set, had some really cool stuff. It did a lot, but it really sort of, I don't want to say necessarily that it warped the meta at the time, but it definitely made a major, major, major impact. And because it came out just a month before Lycoris Recoil, Lycoris Recoil was comparatively just sort of underpowered. I think a lot of people just sort of dismissed Lycoris Recoil a bit. It also was coming out during a time when we had had a string of releases over the year prior that were all very, very competitively viable and were at the time still topping very, very consistently in regionals. And Hollow-Life 2 had just come out a few months before that, which saw a lot of good stuff released. Overlords 2 came out just a few months before. Slime Volume 3 came out the previous year. Quint's movie set came out the previous year. Avatar came out the previous year. And all those decks at the time, all those sets, they were consistently topping. Seven Deadly Sins was still consistently topping at that point in time. And arguably, all of those were just quote unquote more competitive than Lycoris Recoil. So I think Weiss, just from a competitive standpoint, had a lot going on at the time. And Lycoris maybe just felt a tad more fragile when compared to those other sets. So competitively, a lot of people maybe just dismiss the set upon release. I'm not gonna say whether that's right or wrong. I thought the set was perfectly fine when it came out, but I will concede that it was not a Chainsaw Man or a Hololive Volume 2 or something like that upon its initial release, even though I did think the first initial release was absolutely fantastic. And then aside from the competitive standpoint, just from a pure collectability standpoint, it also had a major issue as well. An issue which, in my opinion, could have been solved. And I don't have any proof of this. I did not go around doing polls of everybody that's ever bought a Weiss product, but I think the issue was a issue caused by Bushiroad, and in my opinion, I do think it impacted sales. What that issue is that Lycoris Recoil is an Aniplex property. Now, several years ago, um, Aniplex has been licensing various IPs to Bushiroad for many years now. They've been licensing Sword Art Online, the Fate series, other things. And at a certain point, I want to say, I think it started with the release of Fate's Stay Night Heaven's Feel Volume 2, which was, I think, the summer of 2021, if I'm not mistaken. At that point, Aniplex, we stopped getting signatures in Aniplex licensed properties. So Heaven's Feel Volume 1 from Fate did have signatures on the SPs, but Volume 2, which was still an Aniplex thing, did not. And every subsequent Aniplex release did not have signatures. So Psychono, um, other things like that, they just did not have signatures on them. The sole exception was the 10th anniversary animation Sword Art Online set, which it seems like Bushiroad did pony up and they paid to get the signatures for the SPs. Now, I know a lot of players may not actually care about, having signed cards in their decks, and that's perfectly fine. But Weiss Schwarz is, I don't want to say it's largely a collector's game, but I do think the collector community is a very, very important part of keeping Weiss afloat. Most people, I don't want to say most, but I want to say a lot of the people that I've interacted with in the various Weiss communities over the years, they seem to almost not even realize that the text on the Weiss cards actually means anything. A lot of people, because they just collect the cards, and that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think Lycoris Recoil was a very popular anime when it came out. Like, it was a Anime of the Year nominated at the Crunchyroll Awards. And I think over the years it just continued to build hype. It's a fun sort of show, but it has a very passionate fan base. And I think some of that passionate fan base might be people who just casually collect various merchandise from their favorite anime. And maybe some of them, I'm guessing, collect signed cards from Weiss sets that they like, and they have no idea how to play them, and that's fine. Now, all this long-winded explanation is that when Bushiroad announced that Lycoris Recoil was coming to English, at that point we had sort of been conditioned to think that anything that was an Aniplex property, with that sole exception from SAO that I mentioned, was not going to get signatures. A lot of people, even collectors that might like cards, they don't want to spend big money. They don't want to be spending $1,000 or more on a case when they're not going to get any nice signed cards. And when people aren't opening cases, there is a supply issue. which is absolutely affecting Lycoris Recoil, and we're going to get to that. But Bushiroad didn't announce that we were going to be getting signed cards with Lycoris Recoil until it was only revealed once it got closer to release, and they started revealing stuff, and sure enough, oh look, there's signatures on the cards. At that point, the pre-order window was closed, so orders were locked in, and people who, and this is just me making assumptions, but I have to think that there are some people that maybe would have bought Lyco Reco and opened up some cases that decided not to because they assumed that the set was going to have those ugly stamps that Bushiroad had been putting on most of the Aniplex licensed properties. And they really are ugly. And most of the value from those sets that have those ugly stamps on them, most of that value is nothing. A lot, if you look at Psychono 1, Psychono 2, a lot of the most expensive cards that aren't serials or something, they're really not worth that much money. And I'm not saying that in a card game it has to be all about the money, but when you ask people to buy your product and spend a lot of money buying your product, I think a lot of people don't want to just feel like they're handing over large sums of money and getting nothing in return. They want to feel like there is some value in what they're buying. Because of that, when set one released, I think there was more of a demand all of a sudden than there was with the pre-order window. I was collecting and playing a lot at that point in time, and I bought all my Lyco Reco stuff immediately. I was very excited for it. And I noticed that there seemed to be a lot of people leading up to the release who were sort of just, I don't know, shit talking the set, saying it wasn't going to do well and it was going to be an underwhelming set. And then all of a sudden the set comes out and people really are looking for the set, whether it was the signed cards or base rarity. All of a sudden people are looking for double rares and SSPs and everything in between. And people seem to want to build it. And that is a problem because I think the set just wasn't opened up as much as maybe it could have been and rightfully should have been, and that is a problem that has actually only gotten worse, especially once we got the announcement of the premium booster. And the premium booster, when they started revealing the cards on the JP side of things, the premium booster had so much awesome stuff in it. The premium booster fixed all of the problems that set one like Oreco had. And I think some of those problems are a little exaggerated, even though I acknowledge that there are some problems. But the set was just absolutely fantastic and did absolutely everything that the set really needed it to do. And it looks beautiful, and there's a lot of stuff to like about it and whatever. So all of a sudden you had people that were already on the fence, and then maybe set one comes out and they start getting FOMO, so they start buying into it. And then there's still people that are on the fence, and then the premium booster gets announced and cards start getting revealed, and those cards are really good. And now those people that were really sitting on the fence, all of a sudden they want to buy into it. And when you already have a supply issue and the demand just keeps going up, 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 and up, that created a big problem. I have followed the pricing for like Lycoris Recoil since set one came out, and especially with the double rares, some of the double rares, not all of them, some of the double rares, like a lot of sets, are sort of worthless, but there are double rares that we will talk about that are so much more expensive than they need to be, and Bushiroad has not reprinted the set. Persona 3 Reload got a reprint last year for some unknown reason. Nobody needed it, nobody wanted it, but we got it anyway. Lycoris Recoil is one of those sets that desperately needed a reprint, and I think people would have paid for it. People really, really like the set, and supply has consistently been an issue since shortly after day one. And I think as more people discover the anime and more people come into Weiss, it's going to continue being an issue where there are people that are paying $60 just for a single copy of a double rare because of how much passion they have for the set, how important that double rare is, and just how little supply there is. And that is very, very disappointing. And I'm assuming that we're going to keep getting more like Reco stuff in the future. And I think this is a problem that's going to continue happening. But that's enough with that. Just a little brief history for anyone who is unfamiliar with the history of Lyco Reco in Weiss, just in case you are only getting into Weiss and you want to build a deck and you see that you are having some trouble finding some cards. That's just some of the reasons why you might be having trouble with this set, whereas you don't have trouble with some other sets within Weiss. Now, when Lyco Reco Set 1 came out back in March of 2024. It was in the middle of a single season, and then it turned into team season shortly thereafter. And the set did okay every now and then. The set had a good combo. It had some good pieces. It was lacking a little bit of consistency, and it had sort of a high stock threshold for its finisher. But then the premium booster comes out in June of 2025, and it absolutely fixes that. And we're going to talk about that. All of a sudden, people are really hot on the set. It was by no means like an S tier deck or anything like that, but it was a very, very consistent deck that absolutely just sniped wins that maybe other decks in the same position in the same matches wouldn't have been able to do because of some of the gimmicks that the set has. And it even won a major regional. It won Texas back in, I believe it was the fall of 2025. Got first place with an 8-door list, and it has topped very, very consistently ever since the premium booster came out. Lately, I've been on a Lycoris Recoil kick, and I just revamped my deck, and I've been testing it a lot more, and I've had a lot of fun with it. We are currently in the middle of the Summerfest for 2026 team season. We've had a couple tournaments in the U.S. so far. I think we've had one overseas so far, and I expect Lycoris Recoil to be something that a lot of people will have as a third on their team. For people who own it, a lot of people who bought it, they bought it because they really love the IP. And when people have passion about a particular IP, they tend to show up to Summerfest with it, especially people who are a little more casual with Weiss and playing Weiss, which Summerfest tends to bring out those sorts of people. And I think that's a fantastic thing. And I think the set is very well positioned for both the current regional season as well as the single season once we get to the fall and we get out of Summerfest into the single season. But that is enough of the history of Lycoris Recoil within Weiss Schwarz. I don't think I will be covering the history of all sets when I sort of do these beginner guides, but I do have a particular passion about Lycoris Recoil, and there was a bit more to this release that I think is a little tough for people just coming into Weiss and looking to buy Lycoris. I think there's some stuff that just isn't obvious just at a glance, and this hopefully just clears up some questions that some people have about it, as well as give some interesting factoids. Now we are going to move on to the actual cards within the set. So we are going to start with the level 3 combos that are found within Lycoris Recoil. Now, I know for a lot of people who might be familiar with my set overviews, I always start with the level 3 combos, so this might seem very similar. I am going to sort of just skip some of them altogether and maybe barely talk about some of the others. I don't need to go in depth on the pros and cons of every single card that is within the set because this is just more of a guide, and I'm hoping this is on the shorter end. So I'm going to start with a card that is a combo that I want to be good. For anyone that who is just getting into Weiss and they want to build a Lycoris Recoil deck, they may have a problem with certain combos within the set because they might just be hard to find and they might be overpriced and they might be looking for alternative combos. Maybe they see this combo, Time for Work to Sato and Takina. Beautiful art. I wish it was better. It's a Negso combo, but it's a Negso combo that can come out at level 2. But it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of resources. The set has given so many tools to directly support this combo, and yet in practice, it still just doesn't feel good. I have tried to make it work. There's really unless you just really love the art or you really love choice climaxes or you just really love Nexo combos, it's just kind of hard to get behind it because you need so much setup and you need so many resources, and sometimes the game just doesn't allow you. So if you are new to Weiss and you're just getting into it and you just want to build a Lycoris Recoil deck, there are easier options. I would say save a combo like this for when you're a little more experienced and you have a higher tolerance for when the game just isn't going your way and you accept, well, there goes my entire game plan. I don't want anyone to start off with something that requires a lot of different moving pieces to make work and a lot of resources, and then they think that because it doesn't do that well, that maybe they should just drop it. So I wish this combo was better. Maybe they'll make another set and they'll give it even more support that makes it better to use. But the support that it does have is pretty decent, but it's still very high costed, and that is frustrating. So not even going to talk about it, really. Next, we have a very easy combo to understand. We have this Oozing Bloodthirst Takina. She is on I believe it's a stock soul climax. She has no on-play effect. She is When she attacks, if you have her specific climax, you may pay 3 and discard 2 characters. If you do, deal 3 damage to your opponent 2 times. It's pretty unreasonable to think that you're going to triple this, but I think it's pretty reasonable that you can double this combo. It is an uncommon, so it's very accessible. It's very easy to get. An uncommon is not a high rarity card. And if you are able to double this, I think it's a very solid combo. At that point, you will have at least 7 instances of damage. You'll have burn 3 4 times, and you'll have 3 swings. That's pretty respectable. I wish it was on maybe a different climax, and maybe if it was discard any 2 cards instead of characters, especially because the stock soul doesn't give you any cards to hand. But it's still, for what it is and for its rarity, it's an easy enough combo to understand and get behind. Not a bad place to start if you like Takina and you're just looking for something that is explosive but is also simple enough to get your head around. It's one of the easier combos in the set to get behind. Next up, we have the Trial Deck combo. This combo is essentially just a pay 1, ditch 1, burn 2, but it's a pay 1, ditch 1, burn 2 with extra steps. What this combo is on attack, if you have the Pants Climax, you may pay 2. If you do, deal 2 damage to your opponent. It's not flashy, burn 2 is not flashy, but there's nothing wrong with it for a Trial Deck combo, perfectly acceptable sort of thing. It's on a good climax trigger, nothing wrong with it at all. Beautiful art, terrific. Pay 2 is a lot for a burn 2. However, it does have an on-play effect of when it's placed on stage from hand, you may discard a card to put the top card of your clock into your stock. So as long as you have clock to put to stock, that is when this card effectively becomes a pay 1, ditch 1, burn 2. However, if you, let's say you are 2-6 at the end of your opponent's turn, you clock yourself to 3-0. You're ready. You got 3 copies of this in your hand. You've got the climax, but you have no clock to heal to stock. At that point, this combo is not pay 1, ditch 1, burn 2. It's just straight up pay 2, burn 2. At that point, it's kind of hard to triple that combo. That's a lot of stock. You would need a total of 12 stock throughout the course of your turn to triple it. If you are not healing to stock, that's a little rough. I don't think most games are going to work out quite that way where it's so bad, but sometimes it is just going to happen. But still, for a Trial Deck combo, I think it's perfectly acceptable. I guess maybe they were trying to balance it by doing that. I don't know why, because burn 2 really isn't anything crazy. But I think it is on a good trigger. It's easy enough if there are still Trial Decks out there. Whether they're sealed or opened, I'm sure there are open Trial Decks that are out there. You should be able to pick up this combo very cheaply and sort of just get a feel for it, get a feel for how Weiss works. And if you are someone that is already familiar with Weiss, well, then you'll know that burn 2 is sort of like old reliable, and you are probably playing this, I'm guessing, because if you're familiar with Weiss, because you don't want to spend all the money you need to spend to get the quote-unquote best level 3 combo within Lyco Reco, and that's perfectly acceptable because right now there is a sort of a high bar to entry price point wise when it comes to the best, objectively the best level 3 combo within Weiss, but this is perfectly acceptable, especially for a Trial Deck combo. Next up, we have a level 3 combo from the Premium Booster with some really pretty art on it, Snowy Knight, Chisato, and Takina. So this card kind of has a lot going on for it. If you have a copy of this card in your level, this card gets -1 level while it's in your hand. And when it's placed on stage from your hand, you may choose one copy of this card that's in your level and one character from your stage, and you may exchange them. And the copy that you of this card that you exchange from your level, it comes out standing. So for effectively 2 stock, you could bring out 2 copies of this, starting at level 2, which is actually very strong in my opinion. Then it has a climax combo, which is works on a pants climax, and it's on attack. If you have the pants climax, you may pay 1, ditch 1. If you do, burn 2, and this card gets, I think that's 2,000 power until end of turn. So this is a very cheap burn 2, especially because you are able to effectively summon a copy of itself for free. So you could get out 2 copies of this for only 2 stock. Very reasonable. If nobody has noticed, there is a downside to this card. The real downside just being the fact that it has 1 soul. That is a little tough. It is not something I noticed right away when I first read this card way back, a year ago, more than a year ago now. But it does have 1 soul. Now, that does make it very hard to side attack, which is something you might want to do considering that this is something you could bring out at level 2. You want to avoid opponents who have anti-change backups. But this is a very cheap combo. It's I have used it before. I have fun with it. As long as you are okay with making the concession that this has only 1 soul, which normally a 3/2 would have 2 souls. That is really the only downside of this card. Outside of that, it's very cheap. It's on a fantastic climax trigger that makes it very easy to loop this combo, which is probably what you're going to want to do. Because you're doing this starting at level 2. But even if you do 2 copies of this at level 2, it's probably unrealistic to think that burn 2 twice is going to kill your opponent from that point. But because it is a 10k that you could assist or back up so that it survives the swing back on your opponent's turn, and then hopefully you are able to loop this combo during your next turn. Once you start looping it, you really are just getting a lot of instances of damage, and at that point, hopefully, if your opponent did have to crash into it, now you are not swinging for 1 soul. Hopefully, you're swinging direct for 2 soul plus 3 soul at the climax. So I think perhaps I don't know. I don't want to sound I'm blanking on the word, but you're going to snowball into sort of higher damage the longer you keep this card alive. And the fact that it is just so cheap and so easy to do, I really like this card. I think this card is a great sort of budget option. It's probably the objectively, in my opinion, the best level 3 combo in the set that is not the main level 3 combo within Lyco Reco, which we'll talk about in a second. I think it's easy to find because it's from the premium booster, and that has a bit more availability. It's on a good trigger, and it's just a decent card overall that has some really beautiful art, and there's some pants support within Lyco Reco, which makes this card even better. Next up, we have the dual level 3 climax combos, Days That'll Continue on Chisato and Days That'll Continue on Takina. This is the main level 3 combo from Lyco Reco. It did come out with the first Lycoris Recoil set, which was March of 2024. Both of these work on the same climax, and that is a door climax, so we got a good trigger. We'll start with the Chisato. When she's placed on stage from hand, you may salvage any character, so grab any character from your waiting room, and then at the end of her attack, if you have the climax, you may pay 3 and discard 1. If you do, stand this card. So she is a restander. She's a slightly expensive restander, but that's okay. It's not as expensive as it seems. We'll talk about why in a sec. And then the Takina, she heals on play, and when you play the door climax, the same door climax that Chisato works on, if she's in your center stage, you may marker a copy of the Chisato, the Days That Continue on Chisato, from your hand underneath this Takina. If you do, all of your other characters get 3,000 power and the following ability until end of turn. When this card attacks, put the top card of your opponent's deck into their waiting room. If that card is level 0 or lower, deal 1 damage to your opponent. and climaxes are regarded as level 0. So these two cards are meant to work in tandem with one another, which, for anyone familiar with the IP, is really flavorful because their whole thing is like working together, and they cover each other's weaknesses and bring out each other's strengths, and they just have teamwork and friendship and blah blah blah. But it's really nice that you get to use both characters on the same climax combo and that they work best with one another. Now, from I think the general consensus in the community, and certainly my consensus, is that the ideal setup for this combo is to have two copies of the Restander Chisato and one copy of the Takina. If you do that, what that means is that for every time the Chisato's attack, you will mill the top card of your opponent's deck and then burn one if it was a level 0 or lower card. And because the Chisato's restand, they get that on attack mill effect twice. Each one gets it twice. They will attack, mill, restand, attack, mill, and yeah. So that would mean that you need 3 total copies of the Chisato. You'll need the 2 that are on your stage, and then you will need 1 in your hand to marker underneath the Takina to pay the cost for her effect. Now, you don't necessarily have to do it that way, whether you don't feel like it, or maybe you're not in a position to do that. Whether it's because you're low on stock or your opponent is in a certain type of deck state or whatever your reasons are, you don't have to explain them to me. If you want, you could do 1 Chisato and you could do 2 Takina. You could even do 3 Takina if you want, as long as you got 3 Chisatos to pay for the effect. And that's an option too. It's probably the worst option you could do, but you could go for that. You could go for any combination of these that you want. And if you really want, you could even just go triple Chisato and just have 3 Restanders. That would take a lot of stock, and you're probably not going to have the stock to do triple, but that's what it is. However, from my countless testing with it and seeing how everyone else plays it, I think everyone's pretty much agreed that if you can do double Chisato and 1 Takina, that is the way to go. There is a brainstorm within the set that we'll look at later. I should have actually put a picture of it here. It's a normal salvage brainstorm, but when you play a climax, you get to look at the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck and rearrange them. That is incredibly insightful because it lets you know if there's a level 0 on top of your opponent's deck, and if the level 0 card was the second card, you can now move it to the top so that you can mill it and get the burn 1 off of the Chisato when she attacks. If there is a climax there, that feels even better because you move it to the top and you mill it and then you get the burn 1. What I do a lot of the time is if I don't see a climax, even if I see a level 0 character, as long as I don't see a climax in those top 2 cards, I will attack with the Takina first because it feels she will not get a mill, but it feels like it's a lot easier for me to stick 3 damage, maybe 2 if I side attack against something, because I know the top 2 cards are clean. It really depends on the game, my opponent's deck state, and my own stock, and that sort of thing. But I have found lately that I've been doing that a lot. And a lot of the time, just sticking that first swing of 3 because you saw 2 clean cards on top of your opponent's deck just feels really strong. However, if you see a climax off the top, you just move, make sure it's on top, attack with Chisato first, get that thing out of the way. The thing that feels the absolute best with this deck is you see 2 climaxes on top, you attack with Chisato, you mill a climax, you burn 1, they cancel that burn 1, you just with 1 card got rid of 2 climaxes before you even swing. Then you stick a 3 or a 4 if you trigger, or swinging direct, and you stick that. That feels absolutely amazing. And then you restand and you attack and you mill again and you snipe climaxes all day long. Nothing feels better. Nothing feels more high rolly than when you attack with Chisato and you just mill a climax, especially when you mill a climax and then snipe a second climax off the burn 1 and stick the swing. You feel like a Weiss god when that happens, and it just is so much fun. I love doing it. It is a little tough when sometimes you're going to have games where it just doesn't work out for you. Sometimes you're not going to see a level 0 in the top 2 cards when you play the climax. and your brainstorm lets you look at the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. Sometimes you're going to see 2 level 3s, and you're going to attack with the Takina first, and they're going to cancel on 3. And then you're going to attack with Chisato, and you're never going to mill a level 0. It's just going to constantly be level 1 and highers, and so you're not going to get burned once, and then they're going to cancel, and then you're going to restand, and you're not going to mill another thing. They're going to cancel the swing again. Sometimes you're going to mill a level 1 or higher, and then they're going to cancel on 3, and they wouldn't have canceled if you didn't mill them, but the mill is mandatory if you use the Takina effect. Sometimes those games are going to happen. There is an element of chance. However, most people on average are running somewhere between 18 and 20 level 0 characters in their deck. They're running 8 climaxes in their deck. That means that over half of anybody's deck that you're going to go up against are level 0s, which means you have some pretty good odds of hitting level 0s between characters or climaxes, especially when you are getting 4 swings between 2 Chisatos. Overall, I love this combo. It's so much fun. Sometimes it stinks. Most of the time, it's pretty good. And just last weekend, I tested a lot of games with this at my locals, and there were games that I won that I had no business winning purely because I sniped a climax off of my opponent's deck. Sometimes, exactly what I described earlier, I milled a climax, burned one, sniped a second climax, stuck a 3, or a 4, whatever it was. Just it does happen. It happens more often than you might think, but because you are milling from the top of your opponent's deck where climaxes might be, it's a lot easier to do than it might seem. And this combo was good when it came out, but it did require a lot up front. You needed your climax, you needed 3 Chisatos, you needed 1 Takina. The Chisatos that you play from hand, they will salvage. That does make it a little bit easier. But for the ideal setup, you would need 8 stock up front if you wanted to do double Chisato and 1 Takina. Which, isn't crazy, but it is something to think about. Sometimes games go rough, and 8 stock is just maybe a bit too much. And if you start going beneath that, you might have to sacrifice one of your restands. At that point, this combo becomes a lot worse. Fortunately, the premium booster that came out in 2025 makes it so much easier to do all of it. We have this chance for a bite, Takina and Chisato. Now, at the end of 2025 or the beginning of 2026, I made a video where I listed, in my opinion, the 10 best cards released in English Weiss in 2025. Does anyone who hasn't watched that video want to guess what the number 1 slot went to? It went to, ding ding ding, this card, Chance for a Bite, Takina and Chisato. We're going to talk about what this card does and why this card makes the combo we just looked at infinitely better. A big reason why is because this card is just a custom card. It reads like some fan-made custom card that somebody made because they love Lycoris Recoil and they just wanted to make it as good as they possibly can. It doesn't read like a fair card. It doesn't read like a normal costed card. It is just an awesome card that I think almost every single level 3 combo that is in the game, just in general, if they had a card like, everyone who plays any other combo wishes they had a card like this. This card is just absolutely phenomenal. Let's get into what this card actually does. So when this card is placed on stage from hand, you may pick one of the days spent together climax in your waiting room and return it to your hand. That is the door climax that the Chisato and Takina we just looked at work on. That door climax. So when you play it out for free, it just salvages that climax. You don't have to discard, you don't have to pay a stock or anything like that. You just grab the climax back for free. Then during the turn that this card is placed on stage from hand, at the beginning of your climax phase, if you do not have another copy of this card, you may pay 1 and send this Chance for a Bite from your stage to your waiting room. If you do, search your deck for up to 1 character, show it to your opponent, add it to hand, and then choose 1 days that'll continue on Chisato and 1 days that'll continue on Takina. Those are the 2 climax combos we just looked at. Choose 1 of each from your hand, put them on separate positions of your stage, shuffle your deck, and those characters get the following ability until end of turn. During this card's battle, your opponent cannot play events from their hand. So, not only does this card salvage your climax, your level 3 climax on play, for free. So you don't have to sculpt for your climax. You just need to have it in your waiting room. It also grabs you any character from your deck, and then it summons 2 out of your 3 level 3 combo pieces for 1 less stock than if you had to just hard play them from your hand. Rather than paying 4 stock to play 1 Chisato and 1 Takina, you only needed to spend 3 stock to get one of those out. So now we've got a climax, we've got a random character from our deck, maybe a character we need, and we've got 2 out of the 3 pieces for our level 3 combo on our board for 1 less stock. And to top it off, those 2 summoned characters have event protection during their battle, which is absolutely huge, especially when we are playing a restander that would be very susceptible to any sort of money counter event, which would stop damage. For anyone unfamiliar, money counter is just a term that refers to generally an event that turns off a character's ability to deal damage. And it would do that for the entire turn, which would really hurt Chisato because she attacks, then restands and attacks again. It would turn off all of her damage from all of her swings plus her mills. This card is a custom card. Someone at Bushy Road loves Lycoris Recoil a bit too much when they were designing it, and they just were like, how much text can I fit on a card while still without covering any of the adorable art on the card, and just make this combo as good as possibly can be. This is a card that realistically, if it had been printed with this exact effect, it should have had a higher cost to it. You are so strongly encouraged to play your combo via this card because it costs less and does more. You still get the on-play abilities from your Chisato and your Takina. You still get the salvage from the Chisato on play, and you still get the heal from the Takina when you bring them out by summoning them with this effect. But now they've got event protection. You summon them from 1 less stock. You salvage your climax. You added any character from your deck to your hand. So if you were missing one of your Takina or you're missing one of your Chisatos, but it was in your deck, you got to just grab it from your deck for free. For 1 less stock than if you just hard played everything from your hand. Plus you got a climax out of it, plus you got a character out of it, plus you got event protection out of it. This card is absolutely insane. The only downside, quote unquote, about this card, the way that they try to balance this card, is that it does not have a soul trigger. If anyone actually thinks that is a genuine weakness of this card, I want to be smoking what they're smoking, because who gives a crap? That is not like, this card is just a broken card. Every level 3 combo that anyone in the game plays would love to have a version of this card that just does everything for essentially free. This card makes the level 3 combo so much more consistent. It makes it cheaper to do. You're spending less time sculpting for your pieces, which is very important, especially when you're having a rough game. It really is just a fantastic card that is the standout card from the premium booster. But it just makes the entire thing, the entire Lycoris deck, the main Lycoris deck, the most competitive one, just so much more viable because of the ease of use this card creates to using that. It's such a fun thing. It's so ridiculous. This card was the card you get for winning the Meister Cup and getting top 4 at the Lycoris Meister Cup. The Bushy Road knew when they were printing this card that this card is just a must-have. It's an absolutely busted card. I really can't rave about this card anymore. If you want me to hear me rave about it more, go check out my video where I named this the best card released in 2025. And I am not just saying that as someone who just loves Lycoris Recoil and is just kissing its ass. Really, if you've played any other Weiss deck within all of Weiss, whatever it is, whatever your level 3 combos, you wish you had a card that did everything for your deck that this card does for Lycoris Recoil, because that's how good this card is. Now, the combo we just looked at, all of that, most of the talk from this slide has been about this one particular combo and the 3 different characters that work on that combo. It's easily the best level 3 combo in Lycoris Recoil as a whole. I have played with all of them. Some have certain benefits maybe. You know, some require less setup, some require less stock, some maybe like the Bloodthirst Takina have technically a higher ceiling for damage, but that one's much higher costed, and has no real package around it really. So even if other combos have certain things going for them that this one might be lacking, and this one does have a technical chance element to it, this combo is easily the best combo within Lycoris Recoil at level 3. It is the combo that is always featured whenever this deck tops, because it's just the whole package around it is phenomenal, and it's just very, very, very consistent. And I think that is reflected with the price for the Chisato. Now, I pulled this screenshot from today. This Chisato is a double rare. It is the most expensive double rare that is found within Lycoris Recoil, and this Chisato is one of the big reasons why this set needs a reprint. This is a double rare from a set that came out just over 2 years ago, and $45 for a double rare for a 2-year-old set is absolutely insane. There's no double rare that should be that much for something that is relatively that new. But not only that, it's not just the fact of the price, and the price has been this sort of price for a good long while. This is not a recent thing. I have tracked the pricing for Lycoris Recoil for various cards since it came out. The Chisato has only ever been going up. At one point, they were maybe $20, $25 a pop, but it's just been rising, rising, rising steadily. Some of the double rares in the set might be cheaper comparatively, but this one just keeps going up. It's not just the fact, though, that it's $45. It's the fact that there are only 4 total copies, available on TCG Player right now. And this is not new. This has been an ongoing. This is not just, oh, I happen to pick a day where there's just not a lot of availability. There's not a lot of supply for this card. This card has had a major supply issue for a very long time now, and it only got worse once the premium booster got announced in general, and then when the premium booster was confirmed to be coming to English, the problem just got worse. And then when it did come out in English and there was more hype around the set, it just got worse. It keeps getting worse. This card is something that has been sold out at multiple points on TCG Player. It rarely has any sort of actual supply available. Right now, again, if someone was just jumping in to Weiss and they want to build Lyco Reco, they have this one option on TCG Player. Only one person is getting a full playset if they didn't have any copies of this, and then it's just sort of up to waiting to whoever does post it. But a lot of people don't seem to want to be selling theirs, and this is where the whole supply issue that I rambled about during the history section of this video comes into play. The supply issue really hurts a decent number of cards, but this one in particular, double rares for something that's 2 years old should not be this pricey. It's a real shame. I have the SSPs, so it doesn't really bother me, but I'm just saying, it's also not just, I mean, if we look at the price history for it, you see that even recently, people were spending consistently $60 for a copy, $60 for a double rare, for something that's not old. Like that should not be the norm. I think this price is something that is the highest barrier to entry, especially for newer players who maybe they like a Reco, but they don't know if they're going to like Weiss. So because of that, if you are one of those people, if that applies to you, maybe if you're not sure if you're going to love Weiss, maybe don't go out and spend, $200 buying a playset of this combo, because you will need 4 copies if you want to play this combo. Maybe start with one of the other combos I mentioned, see if you like Weiss, and then you could decide at that point, how much you like Weiss and if you want to go spend all this money, because the prices have just been going up, and they've been going up very consistently over the last 2 years. It's not like this is just a recent spike. It's just continuously gotten worse. And unless people just really decide all of a sudden they don't care about this IP and this set and they do it all at once, the price problem is not really going to get better anytime soon. I would recommend the Takina is more reasonable. The Takina is about $11, $12. Now you do need less copies of the Takina. Most people play 2 to 3 copies of Takina, and she's just arguably not as important as the Chisato. Chisato's also just the better girl, so that might be a part of it. I said what I said, but that is, just maybe proxy. You could go ahead if you're new to Weiss, and I don't want to encourage people to go be spending $200 on a double rare that if isn't even like shiny or anything like that. I mean, the foiling on the double rares really isn't that great. You know, start with some of the other combos, proxy this combo, play with your friends, see if it's worth it to you. It is without a doubt the best level 3 combo in the set. This whole package is absolutely fantastic. It feels great to play. But definitely, if you're not familiar with it, test it on a simulator. There, for anyone unfamiliar, there is an online simulator that you could find and play and test it and see if the deck is right for you before you go and spend all this money on 4 copies of a single card. But if you want to do other things, there are other options for your level 3 game with Lyco Reco, and the ceiling may not be quite as high, and it may not be as much fun as playing the whole Takina Chisato package that we just spent a lot of time looking and talking about. There are still good options, and you still have the rest of the set. Fortunately, while this is the most expensive double rare, and it's definitely more than it should be, the second most expensive double rare in the set is, I mean, like comparatively cheaper at about $20 a copy. And it's not something it's a really good card, and we'll talk about it later, but it's not something that you have to absolutely be playing. So this card's hard to get, it's hard to find, it's expensive. But luckily, after this card, the prices do start going down, and it's not as hard on your wallet. But it is the best combo, and that on the best girl, and I guess between those two things plus the whole supply demand issue, I guess that's just what happens, and that creates this price. But if you are someone who wants the absolute best version of Lyco Reco you could possibly build, and you don't care about the money, then I'd say, Mr. Moneybags, go ahead and go buy this, and snag those last 4 copies before someone else snaps them up, because who knows how long you might have to wait before more come on the market, and who knows if people are going to make them, the reasonably priced $45 as opposed to the last 4 solds of $60 per copy. But I try not to talk and harp too much on the price of cards. I try to just focus on the fun of the cards. And this combo is absolutely a lot of fun. Love it to death. I will play that combo until my dying breath, because I just love Chisato. I love Takina. I love using that combo and using them together and having it all come together. And I love watching my opponent's face drain as I mill a climax and then burn one and snipe another climax and stick a 4 because I triggered. It feels so great to watch their souls slip away from these 2 cute girls with guns that do cute things, which is what Lyco Reco is all about. To the level 1 combos of this set, again, not going to cover everything. Hopefully going to try to breeze through this. This is just supposed to be a little bit of an introduction to Lyco Reco within Weiss, so you can get your foot in the door. Fortunately, Lyco Reco does have some really solid level 1 combos. I have primarily gravitated towards one of them, but there are multiple options depending on things like climax trigger preference, deck speed preference, budget preference. You have a lot of options. Even character preference. If you prefer one of the 2 girls over another, that there's cards that are just feature one girl and cards that just feature the other girl, and they all do the same sort of thing, which is to plus you cards at level 1, which is very important. We'll start with the trial deck, My Way of Life Chisato. When a climax is placed in your climax area, you pick any one of your characters. It could be itself. It gets 1500 power till end of turn. And that's any climax. It doesn't have to be the specific climax that our climax combo works on, which sometimes might be relevant. She does work on a door climax, which is a good trigger. When the door climax is placed on your climax area, if she's in your center stage and you have 4 less cards in your stock, you may salvage any character from your waiting room. Yeah, simple, to the point. For a trial deck combo, very good. It doesn't give you any deck speed whatsoever, which can be bad if you're in like a sort of deck state where you have a decent amount of cards in deck, but not a lot of climaxes. This does nothing to fix that. But for a trial deck combo, very good. I don't think it really needed the whole 4 or less cards in stock restriction on it. I do think that's bad. If anything, it should have been 5 or less cards in stock. But whatever. I think it's still good. The climax looks really nice. Go look it up. For a trial deck thing, if you want to just buy 2 trial decks, slap them together, there's nothing wrong with this combo. This wouldn't be the combo I would recommend taking to like a regional or something like that, unless you just really love the art and you really love Chisato, which are valid reasons because both the art and Chisato are beautiful. Next up, we have this My Decision Takina. This is from the booster pack released in 2024. The character facing her gets Encore 2, which doesn't really matter. When she attacks, if you have the Pain's Climax in your Climax area and your stock has 5 or less cards, you may discard a level 0 or lower card from your hand. If you do, look at up to 5 cards from the top of your deck, choose up to 2 characters from among them, show them to your opponent, add them to hand, rest of the cards go to waiting room. Now this works on a Pain's Climax. This is an interesting combo that has seen a very, very, very mild amount of success. I don't think it's a bad combo. For a rare combo, it's not bad, and it's not bad if you just like Takina. Again, it's not the best level 1 combo you could pick from, but it's not like objectively bad. This is a combo that does have a little bit of support around it specifically. We have these 3 cards that all work to make that combo better, starting with the Words of Encouragement Chisato on the left. She gives your love that specific level 1 combo 1,000 power, which is important because if nobody noticed, the level 1 combo doesn't get any power on its own, so the only power it would gain is from the climax, and it would still be kind of weak. So this does give it an extra 1,000. That is cross turn, which is nice. Then this card has another effect where when your other character is put into your clock from the stage, you may pay 1 and rest this standing card. If you do, put the top card of your clock into your waiting room. The reason why that matters is because we're about to look at a card that shoves itself into clock. This Machine Gun Fire Takina, which features Takina, I think from the opening scene or from her opening scene in the show where she just guns down some criminals and terrorists, and for some reason she's the dick when she does that, even though that's literally her entire job, but whatever. When she direct attack, she gets +1 soul until end of turn. That is a decent effect. There are multiple cards in the set that give like minus 1,000 power that you might want to be playing to snipe and kill your opponent's level 0s at 0, so you get a little bit of extra soul, which is nice. Then she has a second effect where when she becomes reversed in battle, you may put her into your clock. If you do, you search your deck for up to 1 copy of that level 1 Takina combo we just looked at, and you put it in the stage position that this card was in, and then shuffle your deck. So the Chisato on the left works really well with this Machine Gun Fire Takina in the middle. Because she'll put herself into your clock when she gets reversed. You'll summon your level 1 Takina combo, and then you could use this Chisato to heal the damage that you just took from this Machine Gun Fire Takina. It is a great way to sort of just summon out a high-powered character starting at level 0. It doesn't have a level restriction, so you can bring out that Takina just whenever this Machine Gun Fire Takina gets reversed, and then start using its Climax combo right away because the Takina doesn't have any sort of level restriction tied to it. Then we have this Invitation for an Outing Takina. Your other character in the middle position of your center stage gets +500 power, and when it's placed on stage from hand, you may discard any card. If you do, you search your deck for up to 1 My Decision Takina, which is the level 1 Takina combo, show it to your opponent, add to hand, shuffle your deck. So it's a great way to stocklessly search for your level 1 combo, starting out at level 0. This is a great card for going first. It's a great card for going second. Nothing wrong with just ditching cards you don't want in your hand for something you do want without having to spend stock. So basically we have 1 card here that gives our Takina some decent cross turn power, and then we have 2 cards here that for a very reasonable stockless cost, let us grab our level 1 Takina combo. I think because this Takina combo does have all the support, specifically the 2 Takina cards, I think the Chisato is fine, but I think the 2 Takinas are better cards. I think the whole package is pretty decent. I have used it a little bit. It's not my favorite, just with my own play style. It does give the most amount of deck speed that any level 1 combo in this set gives you, because you get to look at up to 5 cards, and that deck speed can be very important. So I don't think it's a bad combo, and I do like this little package around it. I just have preferences for other combos, but if you like Takina, you like getting massive deck speed, and you like this little support package, all these cards are like rares or below, so they're very budget friendly. I think it's sort of a great entry point into Lycoris Recoil and into Weiss if you're starting with Lyco Reco, to just sort of get a nice consistent little level 1 sort of combo package going for you. Yeah, not much more to say about that other than it's pretty decent. Next up, we have this Protecting Livelihood, Takina and Chisato with this really nice art. This is from the booster set. This works on a door climax. If all of your characters are Lyco Reco or Weapon, which I think everything or almost everything in the set is, she gets 1,000 power. That is cross turn. Then when she attacks, if you have the door climax, you may look at up to 4 cards from the top of your deck. You pick one, their time together and the future they chose, which is an event, or one character, show it to your opponent, add it to hand, send the rest to waiting room. Then you choose one of your opponent's characters and it gets the following ability until the end of your opponent's next turn. This character cannot move to another position of the stage. I think there's nothing wrong with this combo. I think the weakest thing about this combo is just the fact that it is kind of weak. Even with the climax, this thing is only 6,500. By modern level 1 standards, that is kind of weak. We're seeing most level 1 climax combos go to 7.5 or 8.5 just as sort of a baseline nowadays. So this thing is stronger defensively than I think most level 1 combos are going to be, but it's pretty weak offensively, and I think that is sort of like an issue. This card is good against standby, though. You pick something in their backstage that they standbyed out, and you stun it so it can't move. But you could stun anything. The deck speed is decent. I don't think it's a bad combo. I think it's one of the cheaper double rares in the set. If you like the art, if you like door, if you like deck speed, which the trial deck door combo does not give you, and the other door combo we're going to look at does not give you much deck speed, I don't think there's anything wrong with this combo whatsoever. I don't think it's the best option you could go with, but I do think it does have benefits, and I have used it plenty of times in the past, and there really is nothing wrong with it. I just think there are better options, but it does check a lot of boxes, and sometimes that's really all you need to do. Next up, we have my personal favorite level 1 combo, not just because the art is really pretty. We have this Partners, Chisato, and Takina. When it's placed on stage from hand, if you have another character, she gets 2,000 power until end of turn, and when she attacks, if you have the Pants Climax in your climax area, you may mill 2 cards from top of deck, and then salvage a level X or lower. X is equal to the total level of those milled cards. Then you get to look at the top 2 cards of your deck, and you get to put them back on top of your deck in any order. I love this combo. I have won 3 Meister Cups with this as my level 1 combo. I've been using it from the beginning. Lately, I have switched to the next level 1 combo that we're about to look at, just to try it out, and it has been working really well, so I might stick with that for a while. But I think this is a good combo. It gives some deck speed. I think it's in a good color. The top check 2 rearrange feels very, very strong. It feels strong when the last character you attack with is this combo, because it helps you set up a cancel really nicely. But it also feels strong before that because it sets up your triggers really well, so you can keep climaxes out of stock, or if you need to trigger to get some sort of advantage, you can set up a climax to trigger, so that way you get that advantage. But it also helps you set up when you have multiple copies of this combo. Let's say you attack, you do the first one, you look at top 2, you see the top card of your deck is a level 3 and the second card is a level 0. You can now move that level 3 below that and put the 0 on top so that you trigger the level 0, and then when you attack with your second copy of this, you will mill a level 3, and then you could salvage anything from your waiting room. I think that's really great. We do also have a couple of level 1 characters in both red and blue that have on attack, reveal top card of deck. If it's level 1 or higher, send it to stock. Those cards pair very, very nicely with this combo because you could perfectly set up what's on top of your deck so that you don't whiff on those cards. That feels very strong. I have done that plenty of times and I love that to death. But this is just a very, very solid combo overall. Really like it a lot. Not a bad place to start either. It is a double rare that, maybe the Takina pants combo is definitely going to be cheaper. For sure. I think that's like a 30-cent card. This one is going to be a little more expensive by comparison. By a little, I mean a decent amount. So if you're looking for more of a budget option and you like pants, maybe just go with the Takina. Or pick the next combo we're about to look at, which is on a door, but it is probably less expensive. Next, we have this Under the Falling Cherry Blossoms Takina and Chisato. This is a level 1 door combo that came out of the premium booster. Super stunning art. Pretty much most of the time when we talk about Lyco Reco lists that top regionals and do well consistently, most of the time they're going to be playing this as the level 1 combo. And I always liked this combo, but I preferred the combo we just looked at. However, recently I've been playing this combo a lot, and there are benefits to this combo. So what it does is during your turn, if you have another character, it gets 3k power. So it's 65 before your climax or any other sort of buff. Defensively, it's a little weak, being only 3500, but it is what it is. When you play the climax, if she's in your center stage and you have another character, you search your deck for up to one character, show it to your opponent, add it to hand, shuffle your deck. This card gets 1000 power until end of turn. So it will be swinging for 8-5 offensively when you do the climax combo, which is pretty good. There's nothing wrong with that. This card doesn't give much deck speed, but it gives fantastic selectivity. And being when you play the climax means that you don't have to worry about triggering the card you want to search. If this was like on attack, search your deck for a character, that would be bad for a couple of reasons. One of those is because if you tri-fielded this, you would be doing so much shuffling, you'd waste so much time. You would attack, search, shuffle, attack, search, shuffle, attack, search, shuffle, and that would just be so annoying. But because it's on climax placement, you get to just grab the character you want out of your deck. You don't have to risk it going into your stock before you get to use the effect, which is really nice. You get to pick any character. You don't have to worry about milling the right sort of levels or anything like that. The art is absolutely stunning. So that's another pro. This card is the premium booster. A lot of the cards are easier to get than the stuff from the regular booster, and this combo is a really good combo, and it does see a ton of play. So you might just, if you're just looking to get into Lyco Reco a little bit without breaking the bank, this is going to be one of the easier cards to get from Lyco Reco. And it is very good, strong offensively, very selective. Red is very, very good color. Lyco Reco is a 3-color set or sets. There's no green. It's yellow, blue, and red. Red and blue get most of the good stuff. Yellow gets some good stuff. But red and blue is really where it's at, and red is arguably better. And a lot of the stuff you're going to be playing is in red. So I personally would recommend you go with this combo or the partners, Chisato and Takina, that we just looked at. Either one of those. But if you like door, I would say probably just go with this. And very solid combo. Definitely like it a lot. Moving on to the notable level zeros for the set, I think Lycoris is one of those sets that's blessed with an overabundance of good, solid level zeros. I think even starting with the booster set before the premium booster, we already had a lot of good zeros to choose from. There were some profiles that maybe were missing that we did get with the premium booster, but I think by now we are just in a position that there is ample amount of cards to choose from depending on what colors you're looking to splash into your deck and what sort of slots you're looking to fill, your own personal play style, that sort of thing. There are so many good level zeros within Lyco Reco that I'm not going to cover all of them, and I'm certainly not going to talk about the bad ones. I'm just going to cover a few of the highlights, just sort of as a jumping off point to get you started with building your own Lyco Reco deck and to just point out some of the best of the best. We'll start with this Chosen Place of Belonging Takina. She's from the booster pack. During your turn, if all of your characters are Lyco Reco or weapons, she gets 2000 power, so she is 4k offensively, which is very strong, and she is a JC. What a JC is, it stands for jump counter. When your other character is frontal attacked, you may pay 1 and send this Takina to your waiting room. If you do, you return the character that's being attacked back to your hand. This is the second most expensive double rare that is from that first Lyco Reco booster pack. For a good reason. This is a fantastic card. It's great blue splash if you are very heavy into red and you need a little bit of blue. This is great blue splash, but it's a fantastic level 0. I love this card a lot. I have played it as a 4 of in I think almost every iteration of Lyco Reco that I have ever built, except for my most recent version of it. And I had to make some cuts with that, and unfortunately this card got cut. But this is a fantastic card. People love playing it. There's a good reason for it. Very strong offensively, and a JC is always nice to have. Really great card. It shows up in a lot of Lyco Reco lists, and for good reason. Next up, we have As Long as We're Together, Chisato and Takina. This card, this is the OFR version of it. This is not the regular, whatever the base rarity of this card is. It's the OFR, so the art might look a little bit different if you're looking for the base rarity version. I just put this version up there because it's really, really pretty. What she does is if you have 2 or more other characters, she gets a +1 level and 500 power. So she is 2500 power and level 1 if you meet that condition. And she's a clean cut. So for anyone unfamiliar with the term, when her battle opponent becomes reversed, you may rest one of your other characters and move it to an open position of your backstage. Great way to sort of, in the early game, maintain card advantage without having to spend stock, keep characters on board. Plus the fact that she is level 1 cross turn, as long as you continue to meet that condition of 2 or more other characters on stage, means that she can get over any bombs at level 0 that your opponent throws at you. Because she will be level 1. So your opponent's got a level 0 bomb out there. You just throw this thing out, you beat over it. They don't get the benefit of the bomb. You still get your clean cut. A lot of plussing. Another great card to splash with blue. You pick up the OFRs and you have one of the best looking cards in the set. And these are actually, fun fact about me, these are the sleeves that I use for all of my Lyco Reco decks. I bought like 10 packs of these sleeves, so that way I would be future proofed, even if they kept pumping out Lyco Reco sets, just because I love the art so much. But this is one of those cards that I throw into in some amount, whether it's 3 copies, 4 copies, whatever, into every Lyco Reco deck I build. It's one of the better plussing zeros in the set. Really strong card. Really, really enjoy it. Next, we have this Plain Clothes Takina. This is actually a card that a lot of people were hot on for a while, but I wasn't as sold on it. Not because I thought it was bad, but because it just wasn't my play style. But for I'd say the last 5 months or so, I have been using this card, and it's grown on me a lot, and I actually really, really enjoy this card. And now I pretty much throw at least 3 copies of it into every Lyco Reco deck I build. So what she does is when she becomes reversed, if her battle opponent is level 0 or lower, you may put that character into your opponent's stock. If you do, you put the bottom card of your opponent's stock into their waiting room. So she's a level 0 character stock bomb. Not anything flashy, but there's nothing wrong with that. You would not be playing her if she only had that first effect. However, she does have a second effect where when she becomes reversed in battle, which is easy to do because she's only 500 power, you may send her from your stage to your clock. If you do, reveal the top card of your deck. If that card is a hot new dish, which is an event that no one really plays, or a character, you add that to your hand. So she is a great way to stock bomb things and deal with problems, especially problems where your opponent has a character that maybe has an on death effect. So when it does something when it hits waiting room, this is a great way for you to help get around that and deny them that ability. And on top of that, she has a good chance of plussing you just raw card hand advantage. She will whiff on climaxes or any other events you might be playing, but to be honest, Lyco Reco doesn't really have a ton of events anyway, so I don't think it's really going to matter. So for most people, it's really just going to whiff on climaxes. This card is fantastic. I love playing it out. It's great against a lot of different things for its stock bomb ability, but it's always useful to just sort of have the whole send itself to clock to add the top character of your deck to your hand. Sometimes you might grab something you really don't care about. But at that point, you just clock it the next turn. It's a great card early game to just help you maintain hand. It's a great way to do so without having to spend stock. This card really has grown on me a lot, and it's great yellow splash. I think we have one yellow card that we have that is higher than level 0, and I love the card, and we'll talk about that card later. But I realized that I only had, for a lot of versions of my decks that I was building, I only had 2 yellows in my entire deck, my Brainstorm and that other higher level yellow card. And I just didn't have enough of a yellow splash. And then I put this in. Not only do I have the yellow splash I need so that I can use that yellow card, but I'm also actively using both of this card's effects, oftentimes multiple times throughout the course of a game. This will also randomly be good against certain things like Ayakashi Triangle has the big deck out of Ayakashi Triangle is to summon these big level 3s that heal, but they become level 0s while they're on your stage. This deals with that. It deals with 8 Standby Hololive. They have their big character becomes level 0 while on their stage. This is a way to just deal with that without having to actually be bigger than it in battle, which feels really, really strong. I know that clocking yourself for a random card may not appeal to some people, which is why I really didn't play this card for a good long while. But I saw that a lot of people were, and a lot of people were topping while playing this card. So I decided to finally give it a try, and it has worked very, very well, especially because we do play high quantities of a lot of the cards we want to be seeing in our deck. It's a stockless way to clock yourself to help you get to the next level oftentimes feels very strong. It's just a very good card that does 2 good things, and when combined, it just feels very nice. Next up, we have this Encountering Tiny Bits of Happiness Chisato. She's from the Premium Booster. When she's placed on stage from hand, if your opponent's center stage has 1 or less character, you may choose one cost 0 or lower character in your opponent's center stage and put it into their waiting room. And she has another effect for when she's placed on stage from hand, you may put the top card of your deck into your clock. If you do, put the top card of your deck into your stock. So the second effect is a great way to costlessly generate you stock. It's a great way to stocklessly damage yourself if you're trying to reach the next level. But sometimes you might just be 1 stock short of doing something, and this is a great way during your main phase to just get you that extra stock you need. Sure, you could always clock a climax, but it's fine. This is sort of a card that I think is a one of in a lot of Lyco lists. I've been playing it ever since it came out. This card is not a card you necessarily need to see every game, but it's something that if you open with it, you won't mind opening with it. And when you really need this card's second effect, you're going to be very grateful that you have it. There are not a lot of sets that come out with cards that just without expending hand generate you stock. We have plenty of sets that will have some sort of on play, put a card from your hand into your stock. But the only thing I could think of in English off the top of my head that has an effect that is damage yourself, which is, yes, you're damaging yourself, but like technically it's free. The only set I can think of that has a damage yourself, get a free stock would be Tokyo Revengers. So this effect doesn't really get printed too often, at least not in English. This card has come in clutch so many times. Absolutely love it. Definitely a must one of, I would say, in pretty much every Lyco deck. And its first effect feels pretty cool when you're going second and your opponent throws out some big level 0, maybe like a runner or something like that. This thing just kills it. What's kind of funny about this card, it doesn't come up often, but you technically are killing a cost 0. Every once in a while, you will have a game where like your opponent did their level 1 combo, but maybe they had to crash 2 of their lanes, and now they just got a level 1, like maybe one copy of the level 1 combos on board, and it's the only thing on the center stage. It's your turn, you summon this out, and you just kill it for no real reason, just because it says cost 0 and not level 0. Doesn't come up often for that part, but it is an option you have, and it's pretty funny. And technically, in Weiss, we are starting to see more of 2 zeros come out. It is something that they are pushing a bit more. Usually, level 2s require at least one stock to play them out. They'll be cost 1, but we are starting to see more and more 2 zeros come out. This could kill even that because those are still cost 0s, which is just kind of funny. But you're not really playing for that. You're playing it for the second effect, which is absolutely phenomenal, and it really comes in clutch during some very important times. Whether you need the stock or you need a stockless way to clock yourself so that you can get to the next level, which sometimes is very, very important. Next up, we have this Send Off Mizuki. She's from the trial deck. She is a double drop searcher, so when you play her out from your hands, you may pay 1, ditch 1, search your deck for a character. You can also do that effect when she's sent from stage to waiting room. Being able to do that on play and on death is very, very strong. If you want, you could play her out, do the effect, overplay her, do the on death effect if you really need to be searching for 2 specific characters at once. But aside from that, you could just do her effect when you play her out, crash with her, or she dies the following turn, and you get the effect. It's a great one of that I think shows up in a lot of Lyco Reco decks for good reason. I've always had one of it in every single Lyco Reco deck I build. Very, very solid card. Next, we have Night Drinking Routine Mizuki. This is from the Premium Booster. When she is put into your waiting room from the stage, look at up to 3 cards from the top of your deck, pick up to 1 climax from among them, show it to your opponent, add it to hand, rest, go to waiting room. If you put a card into your hand, you discard a card. She is a great way to dig for a climax. We have seen variations of this profile a lot over the years. Recently, in my opinion, fortunately, they have been making this profile when it goes from stage to waiting room. A lot of the time when we see this sort of dig 3 at a climax, it would be when your character is reversed. I don't like those as much because your opponent could always side, or maybe you don't want to be milling climaxes during your opponent's attack phase, but you do want to be digging during their end phase. So I like that this is when it goes from stage to waiting room. It does mean if you need to, you could summon this and then you could overplay it and dig for a climax on your own main phase, which is very strong. 2500 power is decent enough also, so this is a great card to just throw out when you're going first. Nothing wrong with it. Dig for your climax. I think ever since this came out, this is something that sees play maybe like 2 to 3 copies in a lot of different Lyco Reco decks. It's a great card to dig for your level 1 climax, but also it's a great card to just sort of level as the game goes on, just to meet that red requirement. Good card overall. Next up, we have this Drunk Waitress Mizuki. She is from the booster from 2024. This is a card that does not see a ton of play now that we have the premium booster. I've always liked this card though, and I played it a lot when the set first came out, and I haven't actually played it for the last several months. Whenever I've played Lyco Reco, I did take this card out. However, recently I put this card back in, and I really enjoyed it, and I don't think I'm going to take it out for the foreseeable future. When she's placed on stage from hand, pick one of your opponent's characters in their center stage, give it minus 1000 power until end of turn. And then when she goes from stage to waiting room, you may discard a card, look at up to 4 cards from the top of your deck, pick a level 1 or higher card from among them, add it to your hand, rest, go to waiting room. The minus 1000 is pretty substantial when you're targeting level 0s. It makes it a lot easier for your clean cut to kill things. Sometimes it also just helps your level 1s kill things if your opponent really walled up big. But recently, for my own deck, I switched to the level 1 door combo that when you play the climax searches your deck for any character. And I have liked that combo, but I have found that that combo really doesn't give deck speed. So if I'm in a bad deck state, that card doesn't help me really get out of it. And I like when my level 1 combos do help me get out of those things, but I wanted to stay on the combo for a while because it has been working pretty well. But I did feel I need to give myself some deck speed, so I added this card back into my deck, and I kind of regret that I ever took it out in the first place. I know a lot of people, once we got the premium booster, just stopped playing this card if they were playing it at all, which a lot of people weren't. But I think this card is good yellow fix. It's good throughout the course of the game. If you are playing events, this will grab any event since it's level 1 or higher card. But it's a great card going second, especially when you've got the clean cut. And it's just great throughout the course of the game to give you a little bit of deck speed, dig for a level 1 climax combo piece, dig for utilities you have at higher levels, or just whatever, purpose you might need. Even sometimes if it's purely deck speed, and you just trade a card for a card, but you don't even care what you grab. Being able to do it when it goes from stage to waiting room is nice. You could do it during your main phase. You can crash, and I've had games where I've had multiple games where I like that I don't have to decide when I'm going to use this effect until the end of my turn, because I was in a deck state where I'm like, I've got like 7 cards in my deck with like 3 climaxes there. I'm about to attack 3 times. I could just trigger 3 climaxes and all right, then I'm kind of screwed. So let me throw this card out there. And if I trigger a lot of climaxes, I'll make sure I crash with this. That way I could get through the remainder of my deck and not just eat like a level's worth of damage the following turn. But because it's optional to use the effect, if maybe I had a small deck and I didn't trigger climaxes and now I got a very small deck and I've got like, some climaxes in there, then I just won't use this effect. And that's perfectly okay. I like the flexibility this card gives. I like that it can give me a little bit of deck speed once I get to my end phase if I'm near a refresh and I really need that deck speed if I'm about to pass my turn to my opponent. It's just good throughout the course of the game, and I have really enjoyed it. It's definitely one of the cheaper double rares. And if anyone has not watched the show, I don't know. Actually, if you have watched the show, I don't know why it says drunk with a question mark, because she's got a giant thing of beer there, and she does nothing except drink and then drive. She drinks and drives a lot, this character. So I'm not quite sure why it's drunk with a question mark, because she's definitely drunk a lot and single a lot, which is like kind of her whole thing. But good card overall. There are multiple cards in the set that give minus 1,000 power if you meet certain conditions, which feels very strong at level 0. And I think this just does 2 very good things at different points in the turn. And even if the first effect loses some of its value as the game goes on, the second effect really, for me, I use this thing constantly, and I do really like it. Next up, we have this Tropical Girl Takina. So our first effect isn't really an effect, it's more of like a guideline you have to follow. You can put up to 4 cards with this card's name and up to 4 cards with the name First Lycoris Fuki in your deck. First Lycoris Fuki is a card from the booster. This Tropical Girl Takina was released in the premium booster. They have the same exact effects. There is no difference between the 2 of them. The only difference is the name and the character on the card. They reprinted the Fuki that's mentioned in the first effect for this card on this Tropical Girl Takina in the premium booster. Maybe they did that because the Fuki was a good card that saw a lot more play than Bushiroad was expecting. My guess is that that card did not have a foil version and it was on a character that nobody cares about, so they reprinted it on a nice pretty Takina in the premium booster so that people would buy it because they knew people wanted it on a character that was better than Fuki. That's my theory, but who knows? But bottom line is you could have 4 copies of this in your deck, but then you can't have any copies of that Fuki. You could have 2 copies of this and 2 copies of the Fuki, 3 of one of the other. You just can't have more than 4 total between the 2. So just keep that in mind. You can't run 8 copies of this effect. Then her actual effect is when she direct attacks, pick 1 character in your opponent's center stage and it gets minus 1,000 power until end of turn. And then her second effect is you can send her from your stage into your clock. If you do, look at up to 4 cards on the top of your deck, choose up to one Lyco Reco character or weapon character, show it to your opponent, put it into your hand, send the rest to waiting room. This card sees a ton of play. This is a great way to both clock yourself without spending stock, while giving you deck speed, while grabbing you a character. Yes, you are damaging yourself, but when sometimes you just need to get to the next level without spending stock, um, it doesn't really matter. You want to be damaging yourself anyway, and you're not spending stock to do that. You're getting deck speed. You're getting a decent amount of deck speed also, and you're trading a card for a card, and the only downside is now you have an extra card in your clock, which sometimes really isn't a downside. This can help you color fix for blue. So if you just need to get some blue into your clock so you meet a certain color condition, this fixes that. And the direct attack, give minus 1,000 to something, that feels really, really strong, especially at 0. A thing that I like to do and a lot of people like to do is play this out, attack direct with it, kill something in your opponent's center stage, clean cut this card back, and then send it to your clock the following turn. It just feels like so much plusing out of one card. This is definitely a really great card. That was good when set 1 came out, when it was on that first Lycoris Fuki. And it only got better when they gave it to Takina, because Takina is a better character, even if the effects are identical. I have the SP pictured here. The regular art, though, is still very pretty, but the SP does look really nice. So just for anyone who is going to be buying any sort of Lyco Reco cards, just keep in mind that the art does look a tiny bit different. So don't just go judging based off the pictures and complaining that I told you to go buy like $100 SP. There are other versions of this card that still look nice, but very good card, does multiple really good things at different points in the game, and just something that most people seem to be playing 2 to 3 copies of in their Lyco Reco deck, and for good reason. It does work very well. Next up, we have another card from the premium booster. This is also the SP version, and I picked that over the regular version because the art is just stunning. This Obligation of a Lycoris Takina. If she's in the middle position of your center stage, she gets 1 soul. Absolutely fantastic. We always love pushing damage. And she's a Reco. What a Reco effect refers to, it's a colloquial term in Weiss to refer to any card that is on play. Discard a card, reveal the top card of your deck, and then salvage a level X or lower character from your waiting room. X is equal or less than the level of the revealed card. A great way to get cards you don't want in your hand out of your hand, such as extra climaxes, and trade them for playable characters. Sometimes, it's a great way to just grab back your Ricky or your Brainstorm. It's a great way to sometimes high roll and you reveal a level 1 or even a level 3, and you grab back a level 1 combo or a level 3 combo or an early play healer, whatever it is. At worst, you just trade a dead card in your hand you don't need for an attacker. And we run a lot of good utility cards at level 0, no matter what Lyco deck we are building. There's just so much good stuff at 0 for various situations that it doesn't really feel bad if you only ever reveal zeros with this, because it's just a great way to, without spending stock, grab back some really cool utilities that Lyco offers. And as long as you keep her in the middle position, she gets +1 soul. And on top of that, because you're using the Reco effect, you have top deck knowledge, so you know if it's a soul trigger or not, and that can help set up an attack. Maybe you want to really be pushing for soul and you revealed a card with a soul trigger. You put this in the middle and now you're swinging for 1, 2, 3 because you triggered, and you knew you were going to trigger because you revealed it with its second effect. Really strong card. I think it's a really good 2 to 3 of in most Lyco decks. This was something that was missing from the original set, and I'm really glad that they put it in the premium booster because it's just really, really great. Next up, we have Obligation of a Lycoris Chisato. Again, I am featuring the beautiful SP art of Chisato, but they do have lower rarity versions of this. This is just a Ricky. For anyone unfamiliar, that refers to this. What this card does is, on play, pay 1, put a character from your waiting room to the bottom of your clock, search your deck for a level 1 or lower character, then shuffle your deck. Very common profile. It's sort of a must-have. The original set did have a Ricky, but it was from the trial deck, and it was a salvage Ricky. It was an on-death salvage Ricky, which just wasn't isn't as good as an on-play Search Ricky. I still liked that card. It was on a Chisato, and Chisato's the best, so I didn't mind it and I played it. But and just a normal on-play Ricky was very, very needed, and I think it's great that they gave it to this Chisato in the premium booster, because they also gave it a soul trigger for some reason. This card didn't need to have a soul trigger, but it does. You know, and that's just awesome because more soul triggers means you're pushing more damage throughout the course of the game, and that's almost always a good thing. Plus, you are usually, though lately not as much, but a lot of the time Rickies will just put the top card of your deck into your clock. So you might just like clock a climax, which nobody wants. This is putting a character from your waiting room to the bottom of your clock, um, which helps you really set up colors. It sets up in case you're looking for a certain thing in your level, if you need to meet a certain experience requirement or something like that. Fantastic card. The soul trigger is really nice. It's pretty much a must 3 of, or maybe a 4 of, in most Lyco Reco decks. Then we have this Touring Tokyo Chisato. When your character's trigger check reveals a door climax in its trigger icon. Sorry. When your character's trigger check reveals a climax with door in its trigger icon, your opponent mills the top 4 cards of their deck. A lot of people play this in 8 door. 8 door is very popular when it comes to Lyco Reco. This card is also a Top Check 3 Brainstorm. I personally love Top Check 3 Brainstorm, so it's pay 1, rest yourself, mill 4 for every climax. You get to look at up to 3 cards on top of deck, add any card. I love that selectivity. I love that deck speed. Really nice. A lot of people do really like the first effect on this. Personally, I'm not as much of a fan because I have had multiple games where I'm in a mirror match, especially during Meister Cups, where I was out 8 climaxes and I had like 4 or 5 cards in my deck, and my opponent attacks and they trigger a door climax. And this card's first effect to force your opponent to mill is mandatory. So I milled a bunch of dead cards, clean damage out of my deck, got to a refresh, and then canceled when I really had no right to cancel, purely because my opponent helped me get to a new deck. I have also had games where the reverse has happened, where I am using this card and my opponent survives because I milled them because they had clean cards in deck and I randomly triggered a door climax. I think it's a great card. I love the Top Check 3 Brainstorm. I love that effect. There are many times where you trigger a door and your opponent is going to mill climaxes and you're going to feel like God when you do it. But I think the fact that it's a mandatory mill is not something I'm as crazy about, but a lot of people do really like it. And even if, regardless of your feelings on it, it's still a Top Check 3 Brainstorm. Top Check 3 Brainstorms are great. If you're playing 8 pants, you don't even have to worry about triggering any doors. It's still a very solid Brainstorm, so I like that it's an option for the set. Then we have the Brainstorm that shows up in most people's lists. This Walnuts Identity Kurumi. This is the one I talked about when we talked about the days that'll continue on Chisato and Takina dual level 3 climax combo. She is a salvage Brainstorm, nothing special, but still something good that's good to have for any deck. But this is the one where when you play a climax, you may look at up to 2 cards on the top of your opponent's deck and you put them on the top of their deck in any order. So when we are playing the level 3 days that'll continue on combo, which is partially on attack, mill the top card of your opponent's deck. If it's level 0, burn 1. This is really great for that first swing, letting us set up and put a level 0 on top of our opponent's deck. That feels really great. That knowledge is very nice. But this also feels strong throughout the course of the game. You play your level 1 combo, you look at the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck, you see a climax is the second card, and the first card was clean. Well, now you can just rearrange them, and you can put the climax on top, and now you are leaving 1 clean damage in your opponent's deck. They'll still cancel the first swing, but at least now you have some knowledge, and you could maybe set up side attacks so you don't crash for no reason, or however you got to do it. The knowledge and the rearrange is very nice. Next, we have something called My Duty Takina. What I mean by something is this card is very interesting. This card was originally a promo that was released in Japan when the first Lycoris set came out. when we got Lyco Reco's first set, we just never got this card. Even though this is a good card that's very important for some decks and for some playstyles. Eventually, when we got the premium booster, they did give us this card, but they gave it to us only as an SP. There was no other version of this card in the premium booster, which was the craziest thing they could have done. I have no idea why they did that. We did eventually find out that this card was printed as a promo. I think if you went to like a regional last summer or whatever it was, there was another way to get this, but even still, this card was harder to get than it had any right being. It was delayed for so long with no explanation or indication that we would ever get it. And then when they finally say we're getting it, it's SP only, which is absolutely ridiculous. And then even if you don't want the SP version, oh fine, you don't have to get the SP version. We lied, but you still have to like. I think if it was go to a regional, it was really stupid. I don't know why the release for this card has been so ridiculous. They should have just made it some sort of more easily accessible promo. But what this card does is when it's placed on stage from hand, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a character, choose one of your characters and it gets 3,000 power until the end of turn. That's actually pretty strong. Being able to give it to anything, 3,000 power is a lot. You could give it to herself and she's a 3,500 beater for the turn, or you could just like really pump like your level 1 combo to the moon or your clean cut or something like that. But you don't really play her for that. If you are playing her, you would be playing her as a one of because of her second effect, which is when she's placed on stage from hand, you may pay 1. If you do, you choose one trait of a character in your opponent's stage, and all of your opponent's characters lose all of that chosen trait until the end of turn. So this is like a very cheap trait deletion. This is something that's not going to come up every game, but there are absolutely going to be games where this trait deletion effect matters. There are going to be cards that only have effects on your turn based on having a certain number of traded characters. So there are certain backups that require you to have traded characters on your stage in order to use them. And if your opponent's characters on their stage just don't have that trait, then yeah, just a very, very strong effect. It's something that shows up as a one of in a lot of like a Reco decks. Some people don't play it, some people don't have it. I don't. Still a good card overall, despite its really weird release cycle. It's still great that we did finally get it, and it is a nice one of to have, whether you're playing it or not. It could be format dependent, but it's something you should always just have somewhere, whether it's in your extra Lyco Reco cards or in your actual deck. It's a very nice card. Next up, we have another card that is like the same freaking thing as the card we just looked at, Final Duty Chisato. And by saying freaking thing, I don't mean she does the same thing. I mean she has the same storied release cycle. She was also a promo that Japan got with the release of Set 1, but we never got her when we had Set 1 come out. And then when they released her, it was as SP only, and we didn't know if there was going to be another way to get her. And then turns out the only other way to get her would be to enter the Meister Cup for Lycoris Recoil last year. But this card is also a card that is a good one of to have, whether it's actually in your deck or just with your extra Lyco cards, because it can be format dependent, but it's still a very strong card that in certain formats feels very, very powerful. Certain matchups, this card is like a blowout card that your opponent's not going to see coming. So it's a global 5, which doesn't really matter. Who cares? That's whatever. The pause was not for dramatic effect. I lost power while saying that sentence, so I was just wondering what that was. But anyway, back to it. Its other effect is you can rest it to level swap. So you pick a character in your level, a card in your level, and you swap it with a character in your waiting room. So it's a nice way to fix your colors and that sort of thing. And maybe meet certain experience requirements. But its first effect really is its standout effect, and that effect is you cannot receive 4 or more damage by the auto effects of your opponent's characters. This is really, really strong. We are no 7 Deadly Sins really does not matter anymore, but when Lyco first came out, 7 Deadly Sins was really doing a lot of work, and the main finisher from that was a burn 4. This would have shut that down. There are plenty of combos that do deal burn 4. There's not a lot of combos that you would see that really do more than burn 4, but still, just the fact that in certain matchups you can just totally shut down your opponent's climax combo effectively, it feels very strong. When we did finally get this card in English, it was right around the time that the Av Musica My Go Bane Dream set came out, and there is a level 3 combo in that set called Dolores, for anyone unfamiliar with it, that is on attack, pay 1, ditch 1. It gains the ability that when damage it receives is canceled, that your opponent receives from that character is canceled, burn the same amount of damage, and then you pass that cancel burn ability to another character on your stage. If you are going up against that deck, for example, as long as you leave them with empty lanes, you effectively just shut down your opponent's entire climax combo, because at that point they will be swinging for at least 4, and so if you cancel the 4, and you have this Chisato out, if you're playing like a Reco and you have this Chisato, your opponent would be dealing cancel burn of 4, except they can't because you have this Chisato out. Yes, that might sound niche. It absolutely is. It's a very format dependent card. If you're in a format where there's not a lot of burn 4s running around, or the chance for burn 4s, you're probably not going to be putting this in your deck, but it's something you should make sure that you have just somewhere for when we are in a format where maybe burn 4s matter more. It's a great card. Currently, I'm not playing it because we're not in a format right now where burn 4s really pop up too much, but I was playing this previously for the aforementioned Dolores deck and for Seven Deadly Sins. But since both of those versions have sort of died down a little bit, I'm not playing it, but still a really great card, and the level swap tied to it is really nice. Sometimes just color fixing just feels really good. So that is it for the level 0s. There are plenty more level 0s in Lyco Reco that are great. I encourage anyone who's not familiar with the set but wants to get into it to just go to the Weiss Schwarz website and to just look up Lyco Reco and just narrow it down by level 0s. Just read through them. There's plenty of great stuff. These are just some of the highlights, cards that I have used many times and thrown into lots of different decks, and I've just put in a lot of work, and a lot of the ones we talked about here, they consistently show up in the top Lyco Reco list, and they do so for a reason. They are very good cards, but there's even more good level 0s that Lyco has to offer. This was just a little bit of a taste. Next up, we have notable level 1s. There are a lot of level 1s in Lyco Reco. Unfortunately, a lot of them kind of feel like pack filler. That is one area, when we're not talking about level 1 climax combos at least, where Lyco Reco sort of falls short, in my opinion. However, there are a few worth mentioning, so we'll just briefly talk about them. The first two are going to be kind of identical. We have this Halloween costume Takina. This was referred to earlier. When it's placed on stage from hand, it gets 1500 power until end of turn, and when she attacks, if the total level of the cards in your level zone is 2 or higher, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's level 1 or higher, put it into your stock. We've seen this sort of stock charging on attack, level 1 or higher sort of thing plenty of times. They always have different conditions. Some require climaxes, some require reverses, some require level 2 or higher, most level 1 or higher those. This one does not need a climax, but it does have an experience condition, but it isn't a good color. This pairs very nicely with the level 1 pants combo we discussed, where you get to mill 2 and then look at top 2 cards of your deck and rearrange. I've used this card in conjunction with that combo many times. It feels very strong. It feels like I'm just giving myself restock when I am using it with that combo. Just a good card overall. If you're playing a blue level 1 combo, I would definitely recommend throwing this in there. Next up, we have something that is functionally identical, just in a different color and on a better girl, even though Takina is amazing. We have this Valuing People's Lives Chisato. The character facing her gets Encore 2, doesn't really matter. And when she attacks, if you have a climax in your climax area, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's level 1 or higher, put it into your stock. So she has the same functional effect as the Takina we just looked at. It's just she requires she needs a climax, whereas the Takina doesn't, but the Takina needs experience requirement, which this one doesn't. The Takina does swing bigger, which is nice, but this one sits bigger defensively. So, they just sort of have different conditions. They are in different colors. It's harder to really set this one up like you can with the Takina. But if you want to go for mixing colors at level 1 and you want to play that pants level 1 combo that we talked about and hope you can also play red at the same time, so you could play this and set this up, that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But this does see some play. I think this whole sort of profile just sees a little bit less play now that we have the premium booster and we lowered the stock requirement um, for the main level 3 combo from 8 starting stock to 7 starting stock. 7 is just a lot more reasonable, and that one saves you so many resources. It feels like it's not even the full 7 stock, so you might not need to stock charge too as much as you used to, but I still like that the set has these stock charging cards at level 1 as an option. They're always good profiles to have. Next, we have this reunion with her daughter, Mizuki. This is from set 1 Lyco. When she becomes reversed, if her battle opponent is level 1 or lower, you may reverse that character, and you may also send her from your stage to the bottom of your deck and discard a card. If you do, you salvage any character. We have seen this sort of send this card to the bottom of your deck, discard a card to search or salvage before. Nothing wrong with that. It's nice that it is paired with a level 1 bomb. Sometimes that can be relevant. A lot of people do like to play this as a supplemental level 1 game. I think it's definitely a decent profile that does have its uses, absolutely. So a good card worth looking at if you are playing red at level 1. Next, we have a card that saw more play, I think, before we got the premium booster, because it helped cover some of the weaknesses of the set before the premium booster fixed them. So this card doesn't see as much play anymore, but it's still a pretty interesting card. It's called Alan Children Majima. He's one of the only dudes in the show, and he's like the villain of the show. He has a terrorist trait, which is pretty hardcore. Anyway, he's a 1/1 that all of your characters in front of him get the following ability. When this card becomes reversed in battle, if your stock has less cards than your opponent's stock, you may put this card into your stock. This card is really, really funny. It helps you stock charge. It helps you spend, well, maybe not stock charge, kind of. It has a second effect that is pay 2, rest itself, salvage a character. Pay 2, salvage a character sounds like a lot, but the point of this card is that he helps you salvage back cards. And even if you're spending 2 stock to do it, he is giving the characters in front of him the ability to send themselves to stock as long as you have less stock than your opponent when that character becomes reversed. So he lets you spend your stock without feeling so bad about spending your stock because you're just replenishing it right afterwards. And that helps you. The goal of that is to just help you maintain hand resources without really spending stock. Yes, you have to spend the stock to get it, but the idea is that you're getting it right back because of his first effect. I did used to play this card at 2 or 3 copies. I don't think the stock is as big of a deal anymore, so I don't play him anymore. However, there are people who like him, and I think there are certain builds, especially if you have a finisher that maybe is just a different finisher, or you just have a different sort of game plan or a different play style. There's nothing wrong with this card. I think he's still very solid, very interesting. He does help you spend stock and not feel so bad about spending the stock. Yeah, just a decent card overall that is very interesting. Next, we have this Proof of Alan Children. This is a 1/1 event from the trial deck. If you don't have a Lyco Reco or weapon character, you can't play it from your hand. What it does is you can search your deck for up to 1 climax, show it to your opponent, add it to your hand, shuffle your deck, and then send this event to your memory. Kind of a standard thing. Some sets get this sort of 1/1 event in various colors that will search for a climax. It's nice that it goes to memory. There is a 3/2 off finisher that requires this to be in memory to do something. So it's a great way to sort of get a climax for a cheap cost while getting some memory compression. And if you're playing that off finisher, then this just pairs nicely with that. It doesn't see play in a lot of lists, but sometimes people do play it. I do not think it's a bad card. I just think it's one of those cards that now that we have the premium booster, it's not as needed as maybe it used to be, but it's still a good card. Memory compression is always nice. And yeah, I think that is it for the level ones. As promised, that was pretty short. There are other level ones in the set. There is an anti-change backup at level one. It's the only anti-change backup in the set. But there's not a lot else going on at level one. There are some things people play. I don't think there's anything too crazy though. So yeah, that's it for level one, Lyco Reco. Next up, we have the notable level 2s for Lyco Reco. Unlike level 1, we do have a bit more cool profiles at level 2 to look at. Pretty much most of it is going to be like cool utility, but I think that is an area where Lyco Reco is definitely not lacking. It actually does have a very good amount of utility that you can use at level 2. I would say that I use more level 2 cards in my Lyco Reco decks than I use in pretty much any other deck I build. I feel like whenever I'm building decks, level 2 is always generally, as long as I'm not playing like a level 2 combo like Muron from Slime or something like that. In most decks I build, I probably play the least amount of level 2s out of any level. But there's a lot of good level 2s to like about Lyco Reco that do some really good important things. First up, we have this Etiquette of a Lady Mizuki. I think this card is a good reason to Yellow Splash. She has two very good effects. She is a double removal. So what she does is when she's placed on stage from hand, you may pay one, ditch one. If you do, bounce one of your opponent's characters back to their hand. Then she has a separate effect where when she's placed on stage from hand, you may discard a card. If you do, you pick one of your opponent's level 1 or higher characters and you de-level it. So you pick one of your opponent's level 1 or higher characters and they exchange it with a character of a lower level from their waiting room. This is a great and relatively cheap way to have double removal. It's a great way to have two different types of removal. While bouncing back to hand is generally better than the D-level effect because technically if your opponent doesn't have a waiting room, like if they just refreshed, you cannot pick something to D-level it. Your opponent has to have a valid target in order for you to use the D-level effect. And so that means sometimes they can just deny you that effect without realizing it, or they could try to set their deck up in such a way so that they do deny you that. However, there are times where you only want to bounce back to hand. There are times where you would rather de-level them. There are times where you want to do both. It's nice that it can target characters from anywhere on the stage, so you can bounce anything back to their hand from the stage, so you can target things in the back row. But you can also de-level anything from your opponent's stage. So if maybe they have something problematic in the front row that you want to bounce, but they have something problematic in the back row also that you'd rather de-level and you don't want to bounce it. It's nice that you just have a lot of flexibility built into this card. It's nice that you sometimes might only need to use one of the two specific effects. Maybe you don't need the bounce, but the de-level is nice. You still get a pretty cheap costed way to do that. And 7K is not unreasonable for a power line. I think this is a very, very strong piece of removal. I do really enjoy double removal options, and so I'm glad that Lycoris Recoil finally got one with the premium booster. Definitely a good reason to yellow fix in Lyco Reco. Next, we have this Tropical Girl Chisato. She is also from the Premium Booster. I'll start with her second effect. When she attacks, if the character facing her is level 3 or higher, she gets 6,000 power until end of turn. So she is 12-5 before any other buffs when she is attacking a level 3 or higher. That's pretty respectable. And then her first effect is when she's placed on stage from hand, if you have 4 or more other characters, you may pay 1 to stock shuffle your opponent. So what that means is they take all of their stock and they shuffle it into their deck, and then they put the same number of cards that they shuffled back in from the top of their deck into their stock. So it's a great way to I guess you're not decompressing your opponent, but stock shuffle is always better. Stock swap is always better. Stock shuffle is still pretty good. It is a bit more dependent on deck state, and it does have a bit more of a chance factor to it. However, this is a 2 stock shuffle. I think that's pretty reasonable. You still get to attack with it, and depending on what you're attacking, she is swinging pretty big, so she's good against early plays. She'll be getting over most of them. If your opponent has some sort of level 3 combo that they can bring out at level 2, this feels really strong to help get over those. It's just a good one of as a decompression option. Set 1 did have a stock shuffle on a 3-2 Kurumi. I prefer this because I like being able to stock shuffle my opponent earlier in the game. Sometimes it's always better, I think, to have the option to use an effect earlier. They have the same costs because that one's a 3/2. This one is a 2/1 that requires you to pay one, so it's still two stock. I like the color on this a bit more. I like Chisato more than Kurumi. That's also part of it. But I think it's a very solid card. I think it's a good one of in any Lyco Reco deck. I always play one of it in any Lyco Reco deck. Next up, we have another sort of decompression tool here. We have this Place to Meet Mizuki. She is from the first Lyco Reco set. She's a Fumio. For anyone unfamiliar, what that means is when she's placed on stage from hand, you may pay one, ditch one. If you do, your opponent picks a climax from their waiting room. They return all cards from their waiting room except that climax to their deck and shuffle their deck. This card is absolutely fantastic when your opponent leaves you one or less climaxes in their waiting room, but they leave you a lot of cards in their waiting room. It's just a way to shove a whole bunch of clean damage back into your opponent's deck. There are times, depending on their waiting room, where sometimes even if you have to put back climaxes, sometimes it's worth it just to get clean damage into your opponent's deck. Even though ideally, yes, you would like your opponent to have one or less climax in their waiting room when you use this. I've had games where I remember I was playing a Nikkei player and they had like I wasn't playing like a Reco, I was playing another set that had a Fumio, and they had like 6 cards in their deck, and I knew that they had like 3 climaxes in there, and they had a waiting room that had like 3 or 4 climaxes in it, but they also had just a lot of cards in it. And I was like, well, I know for a fact I'm not getting through and dealing any damage this turn. As their deck stands. So even though I shoved more climaxes back in there, I did decompress them a lot. Even though I put climaxes back in. And sure enough, I dealt damage. I know for a fact wouldn't have stuck if I didn't do that. But ideally, you shove no climaxes back into their deck while shoving a bunch of non-climaxes back into their deck. Great way to decompress your opponent. It punishes them if they are not keeping track of their climaxes and their waiting room and how many cards that aren't climaxes they're leaving in their deck. Helps you just get clean damage in there. She's also a level 2 or lower reverser, so when she's reversed, if her battle opponent is level 2 or lower, you may reverse that character. I know a lot of people do not play this Mizuki in their Lyco Reco list. I always like to have one copy of it in any Lyco deck I build. I think while you're not going to use it every game, you may not even use it most games, it's still an important thing to have for when your opponent is building compression. Sometimes just being able to decompress them can very easily mean the difference between winning and losing. So it's something I like to have. It's in a good color. It's a very cheap Fumio. It only requires 2 total hand and 2 total stock. Being able to do it at level 2 is also very important. It feels pretty strong if you have the stock in hand to stock shuffle your opponent and then to Fumio your opponent if they leave you an ideal deck slash stock slash waiting room to where all that works out. I have had games with Lyco Reco where I stock shuffled my opponent, then I Fumio them, then I did my full combo, and I feel like I stuck swings I had no business sticking just because I stole climaxes out of their deck with a stock shuffle, and then I shoved a bunch of clean damage back into their deck with the Fumio. The combination of all of that, it feels very strong. Even when you don't do both of those, sometimes maybe you don't need to stock shuffle them, but the Fumio can come in very, very clutch. Next up, we have this Reason to Act Chisato. This is actually a reprint of a promo that we got after Set 1 came out. They reprinted it as an SP in the Premium Booster. That's the art that's pictured here, but she does have a more budget-friendly alternative that does the same exact thing. When she's placed on stage from hand, pick one of your characters. It gets +1 soul until end of turn, and you can send her from stage to waiting room to bounce one of your opponent's characters. So this is a great way for one stock and one hand to remove an opponent's character. It also feels pretty strong when paired with the Restander Chisato to give her a little bit of extra soul to help you set up side attacks in case you want a side attack. Maybe you want a side attack at level 3, but you just need small, precise amounts of damage. Whatever the situation is, she's very versatile. The bounce effect is always good We've seen this profile a lot in Weiss. Most decks, I don't think the plus soul really matters too much. You probably play this profile because of the bounce effect, but I think in the main Lyco deck specifically, with the whole restander thing, the soul does really matter. So being able to give soul while also dealing with problem things on your opponent's board, like maybe a neg soul or something like that, just is very strong. Next up, we have a card from the Premium Booster. It's a backup. Will Solve Everything Chisato. When you use, she's a 2500 backup, nothing special. And when you use her backup, you put the top X cards of your deck or your opponent's deck into the waiting room. X is equal to the number of climaxes with door and its trigger icon in your waiting room. This is a great way. It's a very versatile card where if you are in a bad deck state and you just got too many climaxes in your waiting room, it's a cheap way for only one stock to sort of just get a bunch of cards out of your deck. But there are also going to be times where maybe it's important that you get cards out of your opponent's deck during their turn. Maybe you feel like your opponent is about to push you to level 3 and they are attacking, and you notice that they kind of have, at the end of their turn, they're going to have a very compressed deck, and that's not going to be the best for you. This is a great way to sort of just get some cards out of their deck and hopefully get climaxes out of there. It's a great way where if you're playing against an opponent's deck that has some sort of waiting room condition for an effect, you are able to get them closer to a refresh, so maybe they whip that condition. Most of the time, to be honest, you're going to only mill yourself. This is more of a defensive option, but this card does have sort of offensive capabilities in terms of messing with your opponent's deck, and sometimes that really does matter. But most of the time you'll use this to just get out of a bad deck state. The set does have a refresh backup, but that is a pay 3. This is a pay 1, and while it doesn't refresh you, if you are out a lot of climaxes, it can give you a lot of deck speed for only one stock, which is pretty good. I think if you're playing 8-door, this is pretty much a must one of in any 8-door deck. This card has definitely saved me a good chunk of times, and I always feel good knowing I have this card in my hand in case I trigger too many climaxes and just need to get to a new deck. Next is the refresh backup I just talked about, Reason to Fight Takina. This was a promo that was released when set 1 came out. They reprinted it as an SP in the Premium Booster, and that's the art that's pictured here, but there is a budget-friendly, well, I don't know if it's budget friendly because it's still kind of expensive because they never released it outside of the promo, but whatever. You use the backup, pay 1, 2500 backup, and when you do, you could pay an additional 2 to refresh your deck. It's a great way to avoid refresh damage. It's a great way where if you're just out your climaxes to just get reset yourself, and it could very easily mean the difference between winning and losing. The stock cost is a lot in this deck because this deck does spend a lot of stock at level 3, but I think a lot of the time it's still nice to have this card as an option. Definitely a solid backup. Next, we have a card that I don't think really sees a lot of play in Lyco Reco, but I still like that it exists. It's this Figure of Speech, Chisato, and Takina. It came out with the first set. Pay 1, 2500 backup, and then when you use the backup, you may pay an additional 1, and you may sack a character from your stage to your waiting room. If you do, choose one of your opponent's characters and give it -1 soul until end of turn. This is a nice way to minimize a little bit the damage you might be taking on your opponent's turn. This is also a decent way where if your opponent has some sort of on-reverse effect, you can deny that effect by sacking your own character. It's a little niche. This card sees a ton of play in Oshinoko, which has the same exact backup. I don't know why nobody plays it in Lyco Reco. I do like it. I mean, to be honest, I'm not currently playing it, but I still think it's a good backup that is worth mentioning. It's cheap, -1 soul. Certain decks it's pretty good against, and it can be a little versatile depending on what you're going up against, so that is nice. Next, we have this 2-1 event, the Daily Life They Protected. This was from the Premium Booster. Full disclosure, I don't know if I've ever seen anyone competitively play this card. I have played this card casually because I love the art and I don't think it's a bad card. But competitively, you're probably not going to ever see this at a regional. You're probably never going to take it to a regional. But I still think it's a very interesting card because it's very good at hand fixing. If you have a Lyco Reco or weapon character, you may discard a character If you do, you search your deck for up to 2 characters, show them to your opponent, add them to hand, shuffle your deck, then choose one of your characters, give it 3,000 power until end of turn. So this card is a great way. You don't go plus on hand, you stay neutral on hand because you have to play the event and you have to discard to get 2 characters. But for 1 stock, it's a really great way to get 2 cards out of your deck, but 2 specific characters out of your deck. I think the weakest part about this card is that there's no bonder to it. But I do like the card. I mention it because I think this is the sort of effect that this is a beginner's guide to Lyco Reco. And I think I've noticed from newer players, a lot of newer players like to gravitate towards effects like this, especially when they come from games like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon, where this sort of selectivity might be really good. And this is a good card in general. I think the thing is Lyco Reco does what it does really well to the point where it doesn't need a card like this. But I think this card does have appeal to certain kinds of players, especially when you're just trying to get your foot in the door and you're not as experienced in Weiss at maybe setting up your hand as well. And this card is kind of a great way where for like 1 card, plus the discard, you can sort of set yourself up really nicely for your level 3 turn. I think that does appeal to new players, so I'm burning it up for that reason. It would be really broken if this card was a counter and you could use it on your opponent's turn. That sort of deck thinning would be phenomenal, but that would be too good. But next up, we have this event that also sees no play, but I've always liked the card, even though I don't play it myself, and I think it's a type of card and a different newer player would really like. It's also a card that could be really good if we ever got another set where there was another Chisato combo that came out. It's this close fight 2/2 event. You can't use it if you don't have a Chisato, but since Chisato has so many cards, it should be pretty easy to meet the condition. When you use it, you perform the following action 4 times. Look at the top card of your deck, put it on the top of your deck or into your waiting room, and you send this card to your memory. The point of this card is to during your opponent's turn, they attack. This card digs you potentially 4 cards closer to a climax, which means it digs you 4 cards closer to a cancel. I will say this card would feel really bad if you use it and you look at the top card of your deck and you immediately see a climax. You kind of just felt like you spent 2 stock for no reason. But looking at up to 4 is very strong. That is a lot of, if you do the full 4, you just saved yourself from meeting potentially 4 damage, and that is very good. Again, this card really never sees play, but I still think it's a good card that for people who are newer to Weiss and they want to play a little more defensively, I think they would appreciate a card like this. If we ever got a future Lyco Reco set and there was some sort of Chisato combo at level 3 that maybe didn't require stock, I think this card all of a sudden would see a lot more play. Just because then it's still a pretty good defensive card for a reasonable cost. And it does make me want to try it out just for funsies. Next up, we have this Last Moments Takina. This card is very interesting. It came out with set 1, and I used to play 4 copies of it. I no longer play it, but this card was really, really good when we only had set 1 and didn't have the premium booster, and I still think there is a place for it depending on what play style you're going for and how you deck build and that sort of thing. What she does is if you have 1 or less other character in your center stage, this card gets 4,000 power. That is cross turn, so as long as you meet that condition, she is 10k all the time. At the beginning of your attack phase, if she is standing and you have 1 or less other character in your center stage, put up to 3 cards from the top of your deck into your stock. So the ideal thing you want to do with this card is play out 2 copies of her to your center stage, have no other character in your center stage. Start of attack phase, you blind stock 3 cards from the top of your deck for each copy of this card. This card was really strong with set 1 because with set 1, before we had the premium booster and before we had the really broken custom card that made doing your level 3 climax combo really simple, you needed 8 stock up front to do your full combo. This card, if you enter your attack phase with 0 stock, if you have 2 copies of this card, it gets you the exact amount of stock you need to fully do your combo if you are not using that new custom card. It gets you the 8 stock you need. This card, really the only cost is the fact that you're missing out on a single attack. There are going to be games where maybe you don't want to attack because you don't want to push your opponent closer to 3. So you actually would rather only attack twice anyway, and you don't have to make any sacrifices to do it. This card can blind stock climaxes, 100% accurate. That is something to worry about. However, I've had so many games where I was just out like all or most of my climaxes, and not only did this card just give me 3 clean stock, but it also gave me deck speed that I desperately needed because I was out all of my climaxes. This card doesn't see as much play anymore now that we got the premium booster because, again, I don't think it's as needed. But I think this card in other Lyco Reco builds that have other climax combos, and even just in the same build we've always known with the same days that'll continue on level 3 combo, I think there are players that just like this combo, and I see why. I really was playing 4 copies of it until we got the premium booster because it was just, in my opinion, a very strong card. And I still think it's very good for a common. I think it's pretty great. I think this is a great card for a beginner who, which again, this video is a beginner's guide to Lyco Reco. If you are newer to Weiss and you are not as experienced with managing your resources, especially your stock, this is kind of a card that almost acts like a cheat code to make up for that. It's like a handicap. It helps you get the stock you might really need while you're still learning, how to maintain stock and figure out when you should be spending stock and when you shouldn't be spending stock. This kind of just helps you make up for when your games are not going well and you're spending more stock than you meant to, and still enables you to do your full combo. Yeah, the weakness, you're only attacking twice, which sometimes you do need to be pushing damage if your opponent's really far behind on damage. And the blind stocks can hurt you. So, you do have to think when you use this card. But sometimes I guess, maybe you just don't care. You just need the stock anyway, and you just hope for the best. It's a very funny card. It's interesting. And I think that because it is so overpowering in the resources that it generates, it always has the possibility to be like relevant to any Lyco Reco deck that is built, especially if we get future sets. Especially if we get future sets that require a very heavy stock cost. I like that this really it doesn't have a condition that says you can only have a certain amount of stock to use it. It's only the center stage requirement, which means if you have some sort of combo that really requires a whole lot of stock, you don't have to worry about missing it because, we looked at a couple of level 1 combos, for example, that you can't even use the climax combos if you have 4 or more stock or 5 or more stock respectively. There are cards in the game that do stop you from doing things depending on certain game states that you're in. This one is a game state that is very easy to manage. Just don't throw out a 3rd character to your center stage. That's pretty easy to do. And in return, you get to build a crap ton of resources. So I think this is a very funny card. I think if you are going to a regional, you don't really need this card anymore for Lyco Reco in its current state. But I still think this card does have value, and it is pretty interesting. That will be it for the level 2s. Definitely more interesting profiles with level 2 than level 1. Pretty much all utility stuff. There's even more level 2 stuff that I didn't even mention that's out there. There are some good sort of removal options that we didn't talk about, stunning options, anti-change options. There's some good stuff at level 2 in Lyco Reco. Definitely more than there is for level 1 stuff. And I, again, encourage people to go to the Weiss website and just look at all the level 2s that Lyco Reco has to offer. Moving on to the notable level 3s for the set, we have a few to look at, nothing too much. Most of the important level 3s are really the cards we've already looked at that relate to our climax combo, but there are still a couple of good early play healers and that sort of thing worth mentioning. To start, we have this Enjoying the Summer Festival Takina. She's from the Premium Booster. She is a 4 or more character early play, so she gets minus level if you have 4 or more characters on your stage. Easy condition to meet, best early play condition. When she's placed on stage from hand, pick one of the following effects and perform it. Draw 2 cards, discard a card, or you may discard a card to put the top card of your deck into your stock. So she is a great way to just early play stock heal. I love stock healers. I think they're awesome. But she's also a great way to where if you just need like raw hand advantage. She just helps you hand fix, and sometimes that is very important. And when she attacks, if you have another character, she gets 3,000 power until end of turn. So she is swinging at 11k. I think that's pretty reasonable enough. I think a lot of the time you like your level 3 early plays to be swinging for 11 to 12k. She's a little weak defensively, but I think that's because they're trying to balance the fact that she has a very good early play condition, plus she has the choose one of two really good effects, and that was the way they chose to balance her. She's in a good color, she's on a good girl, very solid early play option. I think currently I'm playing 2 copies, but I've played 3 copies of this one before. Very, very good card overall. Next, we have another early play, this Place to Return to Chisato. She is from the first Lyco Reco set. She is also, if you have 4 more characters, she gets minus a level. When she's placed on stage from hand, you may heal one. She doesn't heal the stock, she just heals the waiting room. When she's placed on stage from hand, if you have chosen place of belonging Takina in your waiting room, she gets 3,000 power until the end of your opponent's next turn. That Takina, just as a refresher, that is the JC Takina level 0 that we looked at earlier. So it's a great card that a lot of people are playing already. If as long as you have that in your waiting room when you play this Chisato out, that you get that 3k power cross turn. That's pretty good. 11k cross turn is good. Her condition is good. Heal to stock would be nice, but I guess that would be pretty broken. Very solid early play. This was the early play option of choice with set 1. I think a lot of people have shifted to the Takina we just looked at, but I do see some people still play this. I still love this card. I still think it's fantastic. Plus, it's Chisato. Chisato is like freaking awesome. So, very, very good card. Those are pretty much your 2 early play heal options of choice with Lyco Reco. Next, we have this Cafe Lyco Reco Kurumi. She's from set 1. On play, pick one of the following effects and perform it. You can either stock shuffle your opponent, or you could bounce one of your opponent's characters to your hand. As discussed earlier, I prefer the Chisato stock shuffle that we did look at, and I do like the Mizuki double removal that we also looked at when we were looking at level 2 cards. But I think this is a great way to combine 2 effects into one. Yes, you do have to choose. You probably don't need to do both effects most of the time at once. I think this is a great way to consolidate effects into one card, and you just pick whichever one is more relevant. There's nothing wrong with this card. Before we got the premium booster, this would be the thing that you would pretty much be throwing into every Lyco Reco deck. I don't really play it myself anymore, but I do know that some people do prefer this over the Chisato stock shuffle, and I do think this is still a very good card. Next, we have this Hawaiian Camouflage Chisato. She is from the trial deck. When she's placed on stage from hand, reveal the top card of your deck. If it is in any event or a character, you may deal 1. So basically, as long as it's not a climax, you get to deal 1 to your opponent. When she attacks, you may put 1 Proof of Allen Children from your memory into your waiting room. That is the 1/1 search your deck for a climax event that we looked at earlier that sends itself to memory when you use it. So you may put a copy of that card from your memory into your waiting room. If you do, choose 1 card in your opponent's waiting room and put it on top of their deck. I think this is a very decent off finisher that has sort of an almost negligible cost. I do see plenty of people play this as an off finisher. I have played it as an off finisher before. I don't play the event anymore, and I haven't for a good long while. But I have played her even when I stopped playing the event, which I really didn't use too much to begin with. But I've used her for games where I have an excess of stock, and she would just be a great way to get a burn 1 in the main phase if I had the extra stock to still do my full combo, plus do a copy of this. That does feel pretty strong. But I know there are people who just play her and they attack with her or whatever. I think for a trial deck card, she's very good. I think she's a very decent, solid off finisher that really doesn't have too much of a cost going for her. And she does 2 pretty good things. I think this is a perfect card for newer people getting into Lyco Reco, especially if you just pick up a couple of trial decks, which this card is in. This is a great sort of card to play for like a newer, more novice based Lyco Reco deck. That is actually it for the level 3s. Not anything too flashy. I think most of the flashy stuff was in level 2, level 0. Obviously, there are some great level 3s, but they're pretty much all found with the level 3 combos that we already discussed. Again, there are other level 3s within Lyco Reco you might want to take a look at. There are some that are interesting. I really didn't think there was anything too crazy, to be honest, and most of the time I don't really see people playing many other level 3s outside of what we've already talked about throughout this video. But there might be something that suits your personal playstyle, or just you think is a fun tech option or something like that. Still, we have a very solid lineup of level 3s, I think. Next up, I'm going to briefly discuss the competitiveness of Lyco Reco. I feel like I've already talked about it a bit throughout the video. I think it's very clear. I've made it very clear, plus just tournament results over the last 2 years, especially the last year, ever since the premium booster have come out. It's very clear that the best, most competitive version of Lyco Reco is the version that features this Climax combo, where we have these 3 different cards that work on the same Climax combo. You'll use the chance for a bite in the middle to set you up perfectly and get you all the resources you need. And then you will use the Chisato on the left and the Takina on the right to actually attack with. The ideal setup will be 2 Chisatos there with the 1 Takina. That is what you really should be striving for. But if you're in a weird hand state or stock state or something, technically, if you want, you can do triple Chisato. You can do double Takina 1 Chisato. You could even do triple Takina as long as you have 3 copies of the Chisato to marker. Maybe your opponent is in such a deck state where you need to really be milling them because they just got a bunch of climaxes and you want to mill them out and snipe them, and you want triple Takina. I'm sure games have happened with that. I will say that most of the time I'm really only getting 2 Chisato and 1 Takina. I will say I did have a game at a Meister Cup. The first Meister Cup I went to for Lyco Reco, I actually did double Chisato because early in the game I was playing 3 Takina, and I know a lot of people play 2, but I play 3 just in case. And I was playing 3 Takina, and one of my Takina got stuck at the bottom of my stock early in the game, couldn't get it out. And then as I got closer to level 3, both of my other Takinas got stuck into my clock. My opponent got to level 3 first, and I thought, you know what, I'll grab one of them off of either my Chisato or my chance for a bite. I'll grab it off of that. Both of them got just stuck into my clock, and I couldn't get them out. So what I had to do was do triple Chisato, and I did not have enough stock to do triple Chisato. However, what I did have was the level 0 Umbrella Chisato that damages yourself to blind stock you. So I played a copy of that out, blind stocked myself, overplayed with the level 3 Chisato here, salvaged that blind stock Chisato, played it again, blind stocked myself again, overplayed it with another level 3 Chisato, grabbed it back, and rinsed and repeat. And then that was how I got enough stock to do triple restandard Chisato. I've never done that more than that one time, but I did win that game, and that was pretty fun, and I liked having that option. But most of the time, you are going to be playing the 1 copy of the chance for a bite, salvage your climax. You will then use its other effects to search and summon and do everything for far cheaper than it should have any right to be. You'll play out your Chisato and Takina. You'll already have 1 Chisato out, and then you will have your Kurumi Brainstorm out to let you look at the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck and rearrange them, set up your first attack perfectly, and you'll proceed from there, all for a pretty reasonable, cheap cost. Not literally, because the Chisato on the left is pretty pricey, as discussed. I do not think that means that other versions of Lycoris Recoil are not viable, but I think if we want to talk about just what objectively the best, most competitive version is, it would be this level 3 combo. I think level 1 combos, you have options as long as you are a decently skilled player. I think you can make any of them, a lot of the level 1 combos at least work. Some are better than others, but I don't think the ones that are objectively the best are so far ahead some of the others to where like you have to be playing them, or why bother playing Lyco Reco. I do not think any of the level 1 Lyco Reco combos are so strong where you just feel like you're locked into them. However, when it comes to level 3 combos, it's pretty much this or nothing. Unless you just really, really like one of the other combos because you just like Takina or whatever, then that's perfectly fine. If you have your reasons, you don't got to explain them to me. Play whatever you want, and that's perfectly fine. Here are a couple of deck lists. This is the deck list along with the highlighted Bushy Navi deck code, so you can look this up yourself if you want. So you always have it. This is the list I am currently playing, that I have been testing for a while now. And it's been working really well. There are some changes, and there are some things that I know that I know a lot of people only play one copy of Chance for a Bite, Chisato and Takina. I don't want to take the risk that one of them gets buried in my stock or stuck in my clock, so I play two. I know a lot of people play 2 copies of the Takina level 3 combo. I like to play 3, even though you only really need 1 out ever. But just in case, I like to play 3. I know people don't really play the Fumio, and I do, but that's fine. This list has been working well for me. I have a lot of fun with it. It's done better than I thought, and I've been loving Lyco since day one, and I've been testing so many different versions of it. This is just the most recent iteration of it, and it has worked pretty well. So this is an 8-door list. It does not have any of that sort of door-specific support around it, and I have discussed why I don't want to play it, though it does have value, and there are absolutely games you'll win purely because you milled your opponent a bunch of climaxes off of the level 0 brainstorm that mills your opponent when you trigger a door. This is another version of Lyco Reco that features the same level 3 combo, but it has the level 1 partners pants combo. It's very similar, but it is a little bit different because we have the color fix and experience fix. We've got the Halloween costume Takina level 1 that helps you stock charge. As mentioned, it pairs very well with the level 1 pants combo because that does give us top check to rearrange. In this version is a version that has won me at least 1 Meister Cup. I think I played this version at 2, almost identical. We play the JC, so this is a tried and true build. It works very well. Nothing wrong with it. I think the only major addition that I've put in since that Meister Cup was the 3 level 0 stock bomb clock yourself Takina yellow card, which I wasn't playing before. But the JC is in here, the Takina JC. I wasn't playing it. In this version it's good because we're on pants, so we might be looping our level 1 combo a bit, so the JC helps us do that. If you like that level 1 combo more, I think this is a pretty solid starting point. These are not definitive lists by any stretch of the imagination. These are just good starting points for anyone who wants to get into these combos and play around with it a little bit. This is sort of what my level 0 lineup looks like. However, we have talked a lot about various cards at every level, and so you have plenty of options to choose from to go with your own play style and what you're looking to do. For anyone who wants to play Lyco Reco and who isn't really interested in or can't find them or whatever, get the full-on Chisato swimsuit combo at level 3 because it's hard to find or it's expensive or whatever, or you're not sure if you will like Weiss and you don't want to spend that much money on it. I think all you really have to do is pick one of the other level 3 combos that we talked about and just swap them out for the 4 copies of the Chisato, and at that point you will have 5 extra deck slots because you'll take the 2 copies of the Chance for a Bite Takina and Chisato, as well as the 3 swimsuit Takina at level 3. And you could just throw in whatever 5 cards you want. You could throw in more utility, like an anti-change backup, more tech options, more early plays, whatever you want to do. I think that's honestly really all you would need to change to make any of the other finishers work. If you like the level 3 Takina Chisato combo that comes out at level 2 and summons a copy of itself from your level, you just put in 4 copies of that, take out 4 copies of the level 3 Chisato combo, and then you'll have 5 extra slots to play with, and you really don't need to change much else other than those 5 extra cards, which it almost frees up. It really is just freeing up 5 deck slots to throw in utility you might be missing or whatever you're looking for. I think the rest of the deck really is not specific to the level 3 combos for anything. So you do have a lot of flexibility, and you could just keep the rest of the shell of the deck and just swap out your level 3 pieces as needed if you want to try out one of the other level 3 combos that were discussed. And that applies to this build. It applies to the list we just looked at with the 8-door list. It's really just your level 3 game that would need to change. But if you are playing those other combos, or you're even still playing the same combos that are pictured here, feel free to change the level 0 lineup, add in different level 1 utility pieces, take some things out, move them around. These are just guidelines, especially for people who are newer to Lyco Reco, especially people who are newer to Weiss and are just playing Lyco Reco as a starting set and just sort of need a jumping off point. A lot of experience with Lyco Reco, tested so many different cards and so many different quantities both before and after the premium booster came out, and I still love this set to this day, even more than 2 years of testing, and it's very, very solid overall. There's a lot to like about it. But yeah, that will be it for the competitiveness discussion. To close out the video, I think we covered a lot of ground with this video. I hope this video has been very informative for anyone that is getting into Weiss and wants to start off with Lyco Reco, or maybe start off with something else, but you're still a little newer, but you want to try a new set. I primarily made this video despite the fact that there is no new Lyco Reco stuff coming out during the time frame of when I've made this video. There's nothing announced. Nothing's come out recently for 2 reasons. Not a lot is going on in Weiss right now, so I had some free time to make other content for Weiss. But also, when I first got into Weiss, I found that I would go back to other YouTubers' videos, and I would look at their old stuff, especially for sets that I was interested that might have been dated by the time I was getting into Weiss, but it still just helped me sort of listening to people with far more experience and knowledge. Not to say that I'm someone with far more experience and knowledge now, but at the time I was listening to people that were easily far more experienced and knowledgeable about the game than I was, and just hearing them discuss the pros and cons of cards, and it would help me understand why some cards that might seem really good as a former Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon player, they might seem good to me when I'm comparing them to cards in those games, but in Weiss maybe they're just not as good. And listening would just help me understand how to deck build better for Weiss specifically, and it was all those old videos would just be great resources for me to sort of just build decks when I was really, really bad at building them. So I have really enjoyed making this video despite the fact that it comes out randomly in terms of Lyco Reco content. I think I will definitely continue this trend just to use as a resource for people that get into Weiss in the future, to use as a resource when they just want to maybe learn a little bit about their favorite sets or whatever, even if those sets start to get dated by the time they watch the videos or something like that. And it's also been fun for me because I love Lyco Reco, I love the IP, I love the Weiss sets, so being able to go explore them and talk about them has just been a lot of fun. So let me know what you think. If there's any suggestions from experienced players for anything I might have missed, leave some comments about what you think I might have missed that newer players should be aware of. That way you give them some good feedback. And for anyone that is a newer player and watch this video, thank you for watching, and let me know if you have any questions. I love talking about Weiss, and I love talking about Lyco Reco specifically, so I'm always around to give my feedback on deck lists for Lyco Reco, or card choices, or matchups, or whatever it is it might be that's related to Lyco Reco and Weiss. Yeah, thank you to everyone who has watched. This has been Catskill Weiss Schwarz. Until next time.